Chapter 585. Sigh. The golden-armored warrior commander sighed when he saw the mother and son hugging each other and crying. The only thing that could make Imperial Aunt Tang cry was probably this mother and son's reunion. "My son, let me take a good look at you." Imperial Aunt Tang let go of Yi Hao and carefully looked at Yi Hao. "My son has really grown up. It's all my fault for not fulfilling my responsibilities as a mother all these years." Imperial Aunt Tang looked at Yi Hao with an apologetic and gratified expression and patted Yi Hao's head lovingly. "Your Majesty, Imperial Aunt Tang, this is not the place to talk. Let's talk somewhere else." Seeing the two talking, the golden-armored warrior commander couldn't help but interrupt. "Don't worry. No one will know if I leave the palace." Imperial Aunt Tang said. "Mother, I have something I need your help with." "I don't know," Yi Hao said somewhat embarrassedly. "Howard, please say it. As long as I can do it, I will do it." Imperial Aunt Tang said firmly. She had been working hard just to see Yi Hao as soon as possible. She didn't expect that there would be such a pleasant surprise. Yi Hao actually took the initiative to find her. After seeing Yi Hao, she could no longer hold back the motherly love in her heart. At this moment, she couldn't wait to give everything she had to Yi Hao. "Mother, my fire dragon empire is currently being attacked by the 4 evil spirits." Yi Hao immediately told his mother about his problem. However, he kept his eyes on his mother. He didn't want to put her in a difficult position because of his problem. The 4 evil spirits. Imperial Aunt Tang's face flashed with anger at the mention of the 4 evil spirits. The 4 evil spirits could have provoked anyone, but they just had to provoke her son. If it were any other force, she would have destroyed them immediately. However, the 4 evil spirits were different because the 4 evil spirits were the leaders of the Holy Dynasty. They were the targets of every Holy Dynasty. The 4 evil spirits were easy to deal with, but it wasn't so easy to deal with the forces under the 4 evil spirits. Not to mention other forces, even Imperial Aunt Tang herself had extended an olive branch to the 4 evil spirits. However, the 4 evil spirits dared to touch her son. 4 evil spirits, how Fong Xan, I will make the 4 evil spirits regret living in this world. Lane. The golden-armored warrior seemed to want to say something, but hesitated. After all, he had been in the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom for a long time. Therefore, he more or less had some understanding of the 4 Fiends' Divine Alliance. The troubled look in his mother's eyes flashed for a moment, but Yi Hao still caught it. But Yi Hao was very satisfied when he heard his mother's words. Moreover, he didn't come here to ask his mother to help him destroy the 4 evil spirits. "Mother, I'm not asking you to help me destroy the 4 evil spirits," Yi Hao said directly. "You're not." Imperial Aunt Tang was a little confused. She thought Yi Hao was afraid of making things difficult for her, so she said, "How? Don't worry. Mother doesn't care about the 4 evil spirits." Seeing that his mother had misunderstood, Yi Hao said directly, "Mother, I want you to help me delay the 4 evil spirits' encirclement. You only need to delay them for half a year." Delay their encirclement? Half a year? This time, Imperial Aunt Tang was even more confused. She didn't understand what was the use of delaying the 4 evil spirits for half a year. Could it be that Yi Hao could deal with the 4 evil spirits in half a year's time? But then, Imperial Aunt Tang shook her head and threw this ridiculous thought to the back of her mind. "How are your plans? Can you tell me? Or do you want me to buy time for you to withdraw your fire dragon empire?" Imperial Aunt Tang thought about it and could only think that Yi Hao didn't want to make things difficult for her, so he wanted to buy time for half a year to escape. Thinking of this, Imperial Aunt Tang couldn't hold back the urge to cry, because the more Yi Hao did this, the more she blamed herself. Looking at Yi Hao's determined personality, it was definitely not something that could be cultivated in a day or two. Moreover, Yi Hao was able to cultivate to such a level, and even on a country. He even became the most dazzling person in the grand ceremony and caused a sensation in the entire continent. The difficulties behind this were unimaginable. For people at Yi Hao's age, they all grew up under the wings of their parents. On the other hand, Yi Hao relied completely on himself to grow to such a level. "Mother, believe me, give me half a year's time, and I will definitely destroy the 4 evil spirits." Yihao's eyes shone with confidence. Seeing the confidence in Yihao's eyes, Imperial Aunt Tang wanted to choose to believe him, but she still cautiously reminded him, however, the 4 evil spirits are definitely not as simple as they seem on the surface. "Mother, if I can't do it in half a year's time, it won't be too late for you to make a move then." Yihao could also tell that his mother didn't believe him, but he also knew that no matter how he explained, it would be useless. Only if he could do it would it be the truth. All right then. Imperial Aunt Tang didn't insist after hearing Yihao's words. Moreover, it wouldn't be easy for her to deal with the 4 evil spirits in a short period of time. She also needed time to prepare. "For evil spirits, you will die in half a year's time." Imperial Aunt Tang's eyes shone with intense, murderous intent. Although the murderous intent in his mother's eyes wasn't directed at him, Yihao still felt a chill in his heart. This was the aura that a superior had cultivated over a long period of time. Although he also had this aura, it was still slightly lacking compared to his mother's. "Mother, I will take my leave first." Yihao looked at Imperial Aunt Tang and said with reluctance in his eyes. Although he also wanted to spend more time with his mother, he still had many things to do. Even his own cultivation was still a long way off. He was only a 2nd-level martial sage. Although he could fight against a martial god, he was still far from being a martial god. Moreover, there were still 2 origin source fragments. Up until now, he still had no clue about them. Imperial Aunt Tang really wanted to keep Yihao by her side now. However, she also knew that the current situation didn't allow her to do so. At the very least, she was still unable to control the Purple Sky God Kingdom. The Purple Sky God Emperor had always been eyeing her covetously. If the Purple Sky God Emperor got hold of her weakness now, she might lose everything. Moreover, the Golden Dragon couldn't always hide in her mother's embrace. If she kept Yihao by her side, it would only hinder Yihao's growth. In the Purple Sky God Kingdom's palace. "Let me ask you, where is Aunt Tang?" At this moment, outside Imperial Aunt Tang's courtyard, Zixing asked with a cold expression. "First Princess, Imperial Aunt Tang is cultivating. It is not suitable for her to see anyone at this time." A female guard in tight clothes stopped her. "Is she really cultivating, or is she not in the palace?" The attendant beside Zixing asked in a strange tone. "Your Highness, First Princess, what do you mean by this?" The female guard frowned. Slap. Chapter 586. Zixing slapped the guard's face and was about to barge in. She had received news today that her aunt might have left the palace. There was definitely something wrong with her sudden departure. If she could find something that could be used against her, it would definitely be good news for Purple Heaven God Emperor. Therefore, when she saw the guard stop her, she also sensed that something was wrong. She did not want to delay. "First Princess, you can't." Seeing the First Princess barging in, the female guard could no longer care about the pain on her face and anxiously stopped her. "Whoever dares to stop me will die," Zixing said rudely, and the guards behind her all drew their weapons. When the female guard saw this scene, she was secretly anxious, but there was nothing she could do. "Xing'er's temper is getting worse. You even dare to barge into my palace." At this moment, a powerful aura suddenly came from the depths of the courtyard. Then, her aunt's cold voice sounded. Hearing this voice, Zixing's face turned pale. The guards behind Zixing were even worse. They were all sent flying. They scrambled to their feet in a panic and knelt on the ground, trembling. "Spare us, Aunt, spare us, spare us." The guards immediately knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. After all, they dared to barge into her aunt's residence. Zixing might be fine, but to them, it was a death sentence. When the female guard who was beaten heard her aunt's voice, the worry in the corner of her eyes immediately dissipated and was replaced by a smug look. Men suppressed them. Her aunt did not care about their pleas. She was in a good mood when she saw her son, but she did not expect her backyard to almost catch fire. This was intolerable. She had to make an example out of them and teach Purple Heaven God Emperor a lesson. And these guards were the best chickens. "Royal Aunt, please spare us." Hearing the Royal Aunt's words, The group of guards begged for mercy with pale faces. How is this possible? How could she be in the palace? Zixing, Er's mind kept thinking. She felt very upset. Zixing was thinking of a solution. If she did not have a good answer, it would be troublesome this time. After all, she was too reckless this time. She actually barged into her aunt's courtyard. This was equivalent to directly falling out with her aunt. All the guards were dragged away, leaving Zixing alone in the courtyard. At this moment, her head was covered in cold sweat. She swore that she would tear the person who told her the news into pieces. Instantly, the entire courtyard fell into silence. Xing, this king needs a reasonable explanation. Are you looking down on this king? The imperial aunt's cold voice rang out again. Aunt, I know I was wrong. I wouldn't dare. Zixing wanted to resist her aunt's aura, but it was futile in the end. She could not hold on any longer and could only kneel on the ground. However, ever since she knelt down, the entire courtyard fell into silence once again. Zixing felt uneasy because she did not know what her aunt was going to do. Although she was the eldest princess, she was definitely no match for her imperial aunt. Furthermore, this crime could be serious or minor. If he was the slightest bit careless, it would be a huge blow to the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor. After all, the people standing behind the imperial aunt were not simple either. And this kneeling lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. Imperial aunt still did not say a word. Although Zixing's head was lowered, the corners of her eyes were filled with hatred. She swore that one day she would return the humiliation that imperial aunt had given her 100 times over. In her opinion, imperial aunt throwing her to kneel in the courtyard was a humiliation to her. However, without imperial aunt's orders, she really did not dare to get up. She did not know how long she would have to kneel. Sooner or later, I will catch your son and make you kneel and beg for mercy. Zixing thought resentfully. This kneeling caused her good impression of imperial aunt to completely disappear. In fact, even if imperial aunt did not make her kneel, she might not remember imperial aunt's kindness. Imperial aunt treated Zixing and Zmo as her own children. However, under the influence of the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor, she had long regarded power as more important than anything else. This was also why she would risk everything to bring people into Imperial Aunt's courtyard. Because if the world belonged to the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and her father, then the world would definitely belong to her. However, now that the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom was divided into two, the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and Imperial Aunt each occupied half of the kingdom. In the future, the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom would not necessarily belong to anyone, and she would have more competitors. That was why she was so eager to overthrow Imperial Aunt. However, she did not expect that not only would she fail to get something on her, but she would also fall into trouble. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the sound of a row of people walking came from outside the courtyard. Zixing was delighted. She knew that she was saved this time. She was going to be free. Just as she had expected, a row of guards walked in and bowed respectfully to her. Then they said, "Royal Aunt, His Majesty has something to discuss with the eldest princess." Zixing was delighted when she heard this. She believed that the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor had spoken. Imperial Aunt would definitely not go too far. She would definitely let her go quickly. Unless she comes personally, kneel obediently until I come out of seclusion. Just when everyone thought that Imperial Aunt would let Zixing go, Imperial Aunt's surprising words suddenly sounded. The smile that had appeared at the corner of Zixing's eyes immediately disappeared and turned into astonishment. She could not believe that such unyielding words had come out from her Imperial Aunt's mouth. What was going on? Was she going to shed all pretense of cordiality? The guards also looked troubled. They did not expect that Imperial Aunt would not even give face to the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor. They all had a feeling that the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom was about to change. The group of guards did not dare to stay any longer. They had to quickly report the news to the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor. At this moment, Zixing's heart was filled with resentment. However, she was afraid of being discovered by Imperial Aunt, so she could only pretend to be remorseful and lower her head. What? How dare she? Even now, she doesn't put me in her eyes? In the Purple Heaven Divine Palace, the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor heard the guard's report and instantly slammed the table and stood up. She felt like she was about to explode from anger. She had originally wanted Zixing, to find something on Imperial Ant. She was very unhappy that she did not manage to do so. However, she did not expect Imperial Ant to kill her follower and make Zixing kneel in the courtyard. This directly caused many people to talk about it. This made her feel that Imperial Ant was slapping her in the face. However, there was nothing she could do. Who asked Zixing to barge in? She was in the wrong. There was no other way. The entire Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom knew that Zixing was one of them. They could not let Zixing kneel in front of Imperial Ant. That would be too embarrassing. Chapter 587. Are you trying to intimidate me? The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's voice was so cold that the air around them froze. The guards all shuddered when they heard the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's words. However, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor would never put down her dignity to beg her aunt. If she did that, it would mean that she was inferior to her aunt. That wasn't the most important thing. What was important was that if she went to take Zixing back, her aunt would take the opportunity to show her power. She would say that Zixing had broken into her aunt's palace because of her. That would definitely bring about negative effects. However, she had to take Zixing back because the entire world knew that she was the one who had been groomed by her. Those damn guards. Why haven't I heard anything from them yet? The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor still didn't know that those golden warriors had been subdued by Yi Hao. She was still fantasizing about how the golden warriors would kill Yi Hao and give her aunt a painful blow. She wanted to see if her aunt could still be so arrogant. Your Majesty, there's news from your aunt. Just as the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was still troubled, a guard suddenly came in to report. What did she say? The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor interrupted her thoughts and asked in a low voice. She knew that her aunt had a motive for doing this. She said that she wants to stop the 4 evil spirits from surrounding the Fire Dragon Empire. The guard quickly said, So she wants to protect her son's faction. Wishful thinking. The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor huffed coldly. She also said that as long as your Majesty orders the 4 evil spirits not to touch the Fire Dragon Empire for half a year, she will send the first princess back and hand over Husei Fort. The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's eyes flashed when she heard the guard's words. She was clearly moved. She really said that she will hand over Husei Fort. Husei Fort was one of the most important forts of the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor. It was also a treasured place where the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor cultivated his elites. Husei Fort had always been fought over by her aunt. If she could obtain Amber Fort, her forces would increase by at least 10%. This made it impossible for her not to be moved. Moreover, the price was only to delay the 4 evil spirits' attack on the Fire Dragon Empire by half a year. This price was as good as nothing. She only needed to say a word. Furthermore, she did not believe that the Fire Dragon Empire would be able to come up with a way to withstand the attacks of the 4 evil spirits within half a year. Furthermore, the golden armored warriors that he had sent might have already killed Yi Hao by now. Who knew? All right, we'll allow it. Master, are we really going to give Husei Fort to the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor? The female guard asked reluctantly when she saw Zixing being taken away. It's just a fortress, the Imperial Aunt said with a smile. But if Master does this, the lords who support Master will definitely be displeased. After all, Husei Fort is almost in our hands. We'll have the initiative now, the female guard said worriedly with an unwilling expression. The Imperial Aunt did not blame her when she heard the female guard's words. This female guard was her trusted aide, and what she said was true. However, in order to fulfill her promise to Yi Hao, she could only give up a portion of the benefits. Moreover, this matter would only be effective if the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was involved. After all, she had not yet gained control of the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom. The 4 evil spirits might give her face, But if the purple heaven divine emperor were to interfere, then it would be hard to say. Therefore, to be safe, she could only let the purple heaven divine emperor do it. Of course, the price to pay for doing so would be disastrous. Just the group of people who supported him might be shaken because of this incident. However, as long as it was for Yi Hao, she would not regret anything. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. What surprised everyone was that the four evil spirits had been preparing for this half a year, but they did not attack the Fire Dragon Empire. The Fire Dragon Empire also did not run away. Just when everyone thought that things would return to normal, the four evil spirits suddenly sent out their troops. A majestic army of 1 billion people. The countries that they passed by all offered them food. Everyone was looking forward to seeing what would happen after half a year of delay. Yi Hao had not been idle during this half a year. Until now, he had a total of 30 doppelgangers. Each doppelganger had reached the peak of the martial saint realm. However, his only regret was that he had not been able to find any clues about the remaining 2 origin fragments. At this moment, he had no choice but to give up on his search. The army camp was almost finished upgrading. Yi Hao immediately rushed to the army camp. The current army camp was different from before. Countless illusory arrays had been set up all around. At the same time, Yi Hao had sent a large number of ancient mutated beasts to guard it. He was afraid that the secret of the army camp would be exposed. After all, this was an existence that could summon experts. If this were to spread, it would probably become the target of everyone's attacks. Yi Hao looked nervously at the 4 camps in front of him. They were the cavalry camp, the archer camp, the spear camp, and the big sword camp. At this moment, the battlefield area of the 4 camps was thousands of times larger than before. Moreover, there was a layer of fog above the camps, making it difficult to see clearly. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for upgrading the cavalry camp. Current level, divine level. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for upgrading the archer camp. Current level, divine level. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for upgrading the spear camp. Current level, divine level. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for upgrading the big sword camp. Current level, divine level. It's finally done. Hearing the continuous notifications from the system, Yi Hao was overjoyed. He had waited bitterly for half a year. Finally, this moment had arrived. Yi Hao looked at the 4 camps in front of him. Each camp was 100 meters tall and occupied a radius of 10,000 meters. It looked very majestic. I can finally summon the martial god soldiers. Looking at the 4 camps in front of him, Yi Hao rubbed his hands. System, how many resources do I need to exchange for a divine level soldier? I need 1 million tons of wood, 1 million tons of stone, and 1 million tons of food. Of course, this is the amount of the lowest level of resources. As the level of the resources increases, the corresponding decrease will be made. Hearing the system's explanation, Yi Hao instantly understood. It meant that the 100 tons of food was the most ordinary food. In a world of 10,000 countries, food was also divided into different levels. Because of different regions, the food produced by martial arts was also different. The higher the level of the region, the higher the food produced. It was the same for wood and stone. System, help me calculate how many resources I have. Yi Hao immediately asked the system. System is calculating. Please wait a moment. To be honest, Yi Hao was also a little nervous. How many resources he had was related to how many soldiers he could summon. The more soldiers he could summon, the greater his chances of winning. Chapter 588. Ding dong. Host has 2. 7 billion tons of grain. 3. 5 billion tons of stone. 2. 3 billion tons of grain. Hearing the system statistics, Yi Hao was still a little shocked. He didn't expect himself to have collected so many resources. Of course, most of it was the efforts of those families. System, help me calculate how many martial gods I can summon if I summon all of them. According to the lowest amount of grain, host can exchange for 2,300 martial gods. Although Yi Hao was already prepared, he still sucked in a breath of cold air when he heard this number. That was 2,300 martial gods, and the 4 evil spirits had only sent a little more than 1,000 martial gods. Although Yi Hao was secretly happy, he quickly returned to normal. After all, the four evil spirits still had 100,000 martial saints, and they couldn't be underestimated. Moreover, there were a total of 1 billion martial kings among the ordinary soldiers. Since that was the case, Yi Hao wouldn't exchange all of them for martial gods. Although martial gods were strong, they couldn't fight against 100 martial saints in an instant. System, how many resources do I need to exchange for martial saints? Yi Hao immediately asked. 100,000 of each type of resource. The system immediately replied, I want to exchange for 100,000 martial saints. Yi Hao thought for a moment and immediately made up his mind. With 100,000 martial saints and his 20,000 ancient beasts, the 100,000 martial saints of the four evil spirits wouldn't be a problem at all. Congratulations to host for obtaining 1 billion stone resources, 1 billion wood resources, and 1 billion food resources. Ding dong, congratulations to host for successfully exchanging. Just as the system's voice fell, soldiers walked out of the four barracks in an orderly manner. Yi Hao immediately checked the soldiers' auras. Indeed, they were all martial saints. Moreover, the system was very fair, exchanging for 25,000 of each type of soldier. Looking at the 100,000 soldiers, Yi Hao's blood was instantly ignited. This was what an emperor should have, and his hegemony of unifying the 10,000-country continent was finally about to take an important step. And the leaders of the holy empires, the four evil spirits, were the first stepping stone of the Fire Dragon Empire's conquest. System, exchange my remaining resources for martial god realm experts. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for obtaining 325 archers. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 325 broadsword soldiers. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 325 spear soldiers. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 325 cavalry soldiers. Then, soldiers with even more powerful auras walked out of the four barracks. And Yi Hao's food resources were also declared exhausted. When he saw 1,300 martial divinity warriors and 100,000 martial sage warriors, Yi Hao was filled with anticipation for the upcoming battle. Yi Hao would never let the flames of war burn on the land of the Fire Dragon Empire. And the Baisheng Holy Dynasty was the best battlefield. At this moment, the Fire Dragon Empire's combat power had completely crushed the four evil spirits, although they couldn't compare to the four evil spirits in terms of ordinary soldiers. However, in a war of this level, ordinary soldiers were nothing more than cannon fodder. In the end, the deciding factor was the number of experts, and the four evil spirits had sent out 1,000 martial gods, while Yi Hao had 1,300 martial gods. They would definitely crush the four evil spirits' martial gods. The four evil spirits had 100,000 martial sage warriors, while Yi Hao also had 100,000 martial sage warriors and 20,000 ancient exotic beasts. Therefore, no matter if it was martial sage warriors or martial gods, they far outnumbered the four evil spirits. Moreover, the soldiers summoned through the four barracks would have even more combat experience. That soldier's mind was filled with demonic battle experience. Soldiers, follow me to battle. Yi Hao pulled out his sword and jumped onto the dragon's body, pointing his sword at the sky. Roar, roar, roar. The Flame Dragon Empire had also gathered 1 billion ordinary soldiers, and they charged toward the Baisheng Holy Dynasty in a mighty array. As for the reason why Yi Hao brought 1 billion ordinary soldiers, it was purely to fool others. After all, the four evil spirits estimated that it would take at least half a month to reach the Fire Dragon Empire, and those martial gods and martial saint soldiers couldn't be exposed too early. Otherwise, the four evil spirits would be on guard. Yi Hao wanted to catch them off guard and destroy the four evil spirits. At this moment, the Baisheng Holy Dynasty was dumbfounded. What did you say? The Fire Dragon Empire is marching toward us? Are you sure? Baisheng Holy Emperor asked in shock when he heard the spy's report. He couldn't figure it out. The four evil spirits were attacking Yi Hao. Why didn't Yi Hao prepare to die and attack him? Your Majesty, it's true. A total of 1 billion soldiers are coming toward us. Your Majesty, It seems that the Fire Dragon Empire wants to put the battlefield on our land. After hearing the spy's report, an official said anxiously, "What a vicious Fire Dragon Empire. Don't blame me for being merciless." Bai Sheng, Holy Emperor, sneered with a murderous look. "Your Majesty, do you have a backup plan?" Everyone's eyes lit up. Bai Sheng, Holy Emperor's words were full of confidence. "Take this as a token of my allegiance to the 4 evil spirits." Bai Sheng, Holy Emperor, made up his mind. One had to know that he hadn't been idle for the past half a year. Nearly 100 elites from the royal family were already under his control. He had mobilized a total of 100,000 elite soldiers. He couldn't help but sigh at the resources of these imperial forces. That wasn't all. He had also mobilized the Bai Sheng Holy Dynasty's trump card and gathered the elites of the people. Thus, in the past half a year, he had already created a trump card division in his hands. "Everyone, follow me," Bai Sheng, Holy Emperor, said with a smile. He led the way out of the hall. All the officials followed him out. Everyone was stunned when they saw the scene outside the hall and in the square. There were 1,000,000 martial honorables. Every soldier's cultivation was above that of a martial honorable. All the officials looked at Bai Sheng, Holy Emperor's back in shock. They didn't know when Bai Sheng, Holy Emperor, had created this army of kings. Not to mention anything else, even 10,000 martial saints alone would not be a match for these 1,000,000 martial exalts. "Your Majesty is mighty. We pledge our lives to follow you." Looking at the 1,000,000-strong army in front of them, although it was unlikely that they could defeat the Flame Dragon Empire, they would not be as helpless as they had thought before. The army of 1,000,000 would be a big hindrance to the Fire Dragon Empire. Your duty is to keep the Fire Dragon Empire out of the Bai Sheng Holy Dynasty and wait for the arrival of the 4 evil spirits. Are you confident? Bai Sheng, Holy Emperor, said boldly. Yes, yes, yes. The 1,000,000 martial honorables roared. Chapter 589. Under Saint Emperor Bai Sheng's command, the 1,000,000 soldiers charged toward Yanlong's army like arrows. They wanted to stop the Fire Dragon Empire before the 4 evil spirits arrived. Saint Emperor Bai Sheng was looking forward to the 1,000,000 soldiers. He might be able to make a name for himself this time. Alliance Master, the Fire Dragon Empire, and the Bai Sheng Holy Dynasty are fighting. A scout reported to the East Sha God in the camp of the 4 evil spirits. A dogfight, interesting. The East Sha God stroked his beard and laughed. He had waited for this day for half a year. He had been drooling over the Fire Dragon Empire's 3,000,000 dragon power points for a long time. What did the Fire Dragon Empire have to do to have 3,000,000 dragon power points? The 3,000,000 dragon power points were given to him for free, waiting for him to take them. The East Sha God had obviously regarded the Fire Dragon Empire's dragon power as his own. After all, he had sent people to investigate. The only thing the Flame Dragon Empire could take out was the 20,000 primordial mutant beasts. However, he did not care about the 20,000 ancient strange beasts at all, because he had 100,000 martial sages. Moreover, he had 1,000 martial sages. He could ask the Fire Dragon Empire what they had to fight with him. The East Sha God's eyes shone. He did not care about the small Fire Dragon Empire. After all, it was a country of a young boy. They only knew how to show off and did not know that the tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. However, he treated the Fire Dragon Empire as his stepping stone. He might be able to use this opportunity to break the pattern of the 10,000 countries continent and become one of the divine countries. Order all experts above the martial sage realm to advance. The East Sha God ordered. A country like the Bai Sheng Holy Dynasty was also a good existence. The East Sha God had already thought of taking it as his own. I don't know if my son can do it. In the palace of the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom, the imperial ant looked into the distance with a complicated expression. Half a year had passed. Although she had stabilized the imperial court, her own power was still suppressed by the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor. What she was most concerned about now was how Yi Hao would be able to withstand the attack of the 4 evil spirits. She had originally wanted to send reinforcements, but the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor had long anticipated her thoughts. Recently, he had been constantly making small moves. The royal ant knew that the purple heaven supreme god was holding her back so that she could not attack. Now, she could only pray that Yi Hao would be able to get through this. Moreover, she already thought about it. If Yi Hao could get through this, then everything would be fine. However, if the four evil spirits really destroyed the Fire Dragon Empire, then she would make the four evil spirits accompany the Fire Dragon Empire to the grave. Xing, how's the matter I asked you to do? The Purple Heaven Divine Emperor asked in the Purple Heaven Divine Palace. Zixing immediately smiled and replied, "Don't worry, father. I have already sent people to hold back Ant according to your orders. She definitely won't be able to help the Fire Dragon Empire now." Good. Now we just need to wait for the Fire Dragon Empire to be destroyed and give her a painful blow. Then it will be time for me to eliminate her. Although the Purple Heaven Supreme God's voice did not sound like a man's or a woman's, it was different this time. There was a trace of anticipation and joy in his voice. "Don't worry, father. The four evil spirits have sent out 100,000 martial sages and 1,000 martial gods. This time, the Fire Dragon Empire will definitely not be able to escape," Zixing said happily. "It's a pity that I won't be the one to destroy the Fire Dragon Empire with my own hands." She had suffered at the hands of Yi Hao. She still could not forget it. If she had the chance, she would definitely kill Yi Hao with her own hands. "Xing, I will give you a decree. Come closer." "Your Majesty, there is a group of troops coming from the Baisheng Holy Dynasty. They are attacking us quickly." Yi Hao sat on the back of the giant dragon. As the army advanced, a spy came back to report. "Who are they? How many are they? How strong are they?" Yi Hao was not flustered at all. He asked calmly. "They are from the Baisheng Holy Dynasty. There are about 1,000,000 of them. They are all martial honorables," the spy quickly replied. "Good." When Yi Hao heard the spy's words, he shouted happily. He had a grudge against the Baisheng Holy Dynasty. When he had killed Bai Yi, the grudge had been formed. From then on, he was destined to have an irreconcilable feud with the Baisheng Holy Dynasty. Moreover, the Baisheng Holy Dynasty had secretly gathered all the families that had betrayed him. They had really thought that they had done it secretly. If not, he would have heard about it long ago. Otherwise, he would not have set the battlefield on the Baisheng Holy Dynasty's territory. His goal was to destroy the Baisheng Dynasty as well. "God's Battalion, Saints Battalion, listen up," Yi Hao ordered. The God's Battalion and Saints Battalion were the names that Yi Hao had given to the God's Battalion and Saints Battalion. He wanted to use the God's Battalion and Saints Battalion to conquer the world. "Go and destroy the enemy in front of us. Leave no one alive. Kill." As soon as Yi Hao gave the order, powerful auras shot up to the sky. There were 1,300 God's Battalion and 120,000 Saints Battalion, and they rushed toward the Baisheng Holy Dynasty. "Commander, there's a group of soldiers from the Fire Dragon Empire in front of us." At that moment, a spy in the Baisheng Holy Dynasty's army reported to the commander. "Good. Let them know the power of our holy sovereign army. Get ready to fight." The commander of the army said in high spirits as he drew his sword. "Kill! Kill! Kill!" The army let out a deafening roar. Each of them was filled with fighting spirit. They were the trump cards of the Baisheng Holy Dynasty. They had been hidden for a long time. Today was the day they would become famous. The Fire Dragon Empire was their whetstone. Boom! 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 What's that sound? Suddenly, rumbling sounds could be heard, and the million-man commanders could not help but frown. "Commander, look! They're so fast," a spy said in surprise. "Martial sages. Martial gods." The commander's heart skipped a beat when he sensed the aura coming from the figures. "Get ready. Commander, we are surrounded. There are experts all around us." Before the commander could say anything, a few soldiers rushed over and shouted anxiously. "What? How many experts are there?" The commander was shocked. He had not expected the Fire Dragon Empire to be so fast. "There are at least 100,000 martial saints," a scout said with a bitter look on his face. The commander trembled when he heard the spy's words. Then he murmured, "It's over. Why are there so many experts?" "Commander, what should we do?" "Let's fight them." A soldier said. "What's the use of fighting them? That's courting death. I think we've been tricked by the Bai Shang Holy Emperor. Let our brothers escape. It's up to fate whether we can survive or not." Chapter 590. Battle cries rang out. The two sides finally clashed, and the million-strong army was no match for them. They were like children in front of 100,000 martial sages. They had no chance of slowing down. A martial sage could easily kill 4 or 5 martial venerables. As for the martial gods, there was no need to mention them. Every time they attacked, they would take the lives of dozens of people. After all, the disparity in strength was too great, and the Bai Shang Holy Dynasty did not have the upper hand in terms of numbers. If the Bai Shang Holy Dynasty had 10 million martial venerables, they might have been able to hold on a little longer. However, this 1 million was really not enough to look at. The battle did not last long, and it ended amidst pleas and screams. The million-strong army that the Bai Shang Holy Dynasty had hidden for a long time was slaughtered. As for the people of the Fire Dragon Empire, none of them were injured, let alone dead. The Fire Dragon Empire had won the first battle, and they had not lost a single soldier. Yi Hao was delighted when he heard the report from his subordinates. "All troops, attack and destroy the Bai Shang Holy Dynasty. Treat it as an appetizer before the battle." Yi Hao raised his arm and shouted. He had never shown mercy to his enemies. Since the Bai Shang Holy Dynasty had lost its million-strong army, there was no need for the Bai Shang Holy Dynasty to exist. Following Yi Hao's order, the Saint and God battalions charged toward the Bai Shang Holy Dynasty. Your Majesty, what's the matter?" Saint Emperor Bai raised an eyebrow. Saint Emperor Bai's face was still filled with joy. He was holding a banquet with the civil and military officials to celebrate. He believed that with a million-strong army, they would definitely win the first battle. Furthermore, he was still worried that the Flame Dragon Empire had not experienced such a situation before. If they were defeated by his million-strong army, then it would not be interesting at all. "Is there any good news? Hurry up and tell us about it." "I estimate that His Majesty's million-man army has already defeated the Yin Dragon Empire. Your Majesty is mighty. Your Majesty is domineering." The civil and military officials raised their hands and congratulated him. Seeing the officials talking to themselves, the spy did not have the heart to interrupt, but he still pleaded. "Your Majesty, our million-strong army has been wiped out. The entire army was annihilated. Are you joking with me?" The smile on Saint Emperor Bai's face disappeared in an instant. Even the wine glass in his hand, which was already at the edge of his mouth, fell directly onto the table. Bai Sheng Chao stared at the spy and begged him. He wanted the spy to tell him that he was lying. The entire hall instantly quieted down. Therefore, the ministers looked at the Bai Sheng sacred dynasty strangely. They could feel the awkwardness in the air. Saint Bai and Saint Emperor's kind words were still ringing in their ears. But reality was cruel. How long had it been? They thought that the war hadn't even started, but the war was already over. "Let me ask you, how is the damage done to the Fire Dragon Empire?" Saint Emperor Bai asked, unwilling to give up. He did not believe that Yi Hao could destroy his million-strong army without expending a single soldier. "Your Majesty, the Fire Dragon Empire seems to be unharmed," the spy said carefully. He knew that Saint Emperor Bai would not be able to accept the news. He might even fly into a rage. "What?" Bang! Saint Emperor Bai's eyes widened as he roared. The power in his body shattered the table in front of him. "Your Majesty, please calm down." The ministers immediately knelt and said, "How did the Fire Dragon Empire manage to kill my million-strong army and remain unharmed?" Saint Emperor Bai's eyes flashed with a cold light. "Not good, Your Majesty. Countless experts have appeared in our country. Many cities have fallen." Groups of spies immediately came in to report. "A group of experts? Are they from the Fire Dragon Empire?" Saint Emperor Bai asked in a low voice. The civil and military officials all pricked up their ears. "Yes." The spies' words were not surprising. "How many experts do they have? Where are their realms? Who can tell me?" Saint Emperor Bai roared. He had painstakingly prepared for so long. He had never thought of defeating the Fire Dragon Empire. But he had to create some trouble for the Fire Dragon Empire. And no matter what, he had to win the first battle. But now, he had not even hurt a single person from the Fire Dragon Empire. His trump card, his million-strong army, had been destroyed. Even now, he still found it hard to believe that his million-man army had been wiped out. It sounded like a dream. There are at least 100,000 martial sages. One of the spies said. The entire imperial court was in an uproar again. They all looked at each other and saw shock and fear in each other's eyes. After all, it was not 100,000 random martial sages, but 100,000 martial sages. Impossible! How could the Fire Dragon Empire have so many martial sages? The four evil spirits are only SOSO, Saint Emperor Bai said in disbelief. After all, the four evil spirits were the leaders of all the sacred dynasties. They had stood tall on the myriad kingdom continent for tens of thousands of years, and it was the largest dynasty under the four divine kingdoms. They were truly an existence that could cover the sky with one hand. Forces weaker than them did not dare to provoke them. Even the four divine kingdoms, which were stronger than them, had to give them some face. Even with such an existence, there were only 100,000 martial sages in this expedition. This number had already shocked the myriad kingdom continent, and this also made more forces want to submit to the four evil spirits. Because the 100,000 martial sages made them feel fearful. With 100,000 martial sages, there was probably no country under the divine kingdoms that could provoke the four evil spirits. Everyone was ridiculing the Fire Dragon Empire for overestimating themselves. Not only did they not run away when surrounded by the four evil spirits, they even dared to start a war. Did they really think that the 1,000 martial gods and 100,000 martial sages were pushovers? In fact, not to mention others, even Saint Emperor Bai had ridiculed Yi Hao. But now, Saint Emperor Bai finally understood why the Fire Dragon Empire dared to start a war. How laughable his thoughts were. Yi Hao dared to start a war because the Fire Dragon Empire also had 100,000 martial sages. This was something that no one would have thought of. Saint Emperor Bai was extremely curious. Where did the Fire Dragon Empire find so many experts? After all, martial sages were definitely not cabbages in the myriad kingdom continent. No matter which martial sage it was, they would need a lot of resources, talent, and time to accumulate. Even the four evil spirits had accumulated so many martial sages. Although they looked impressive on the surface, they had paid countless hardships behind the scenes. But with the four evil spirits' qualifications, it was reasonable for them to bring out so many martial sages. But the Fire Dragon Empire was different. It was a fledgling country. They had already stolen the limelight in the Myriad Kingdom ceremony. That could be attributed to luck. Chapter 591. Men, report the news to the four evil spirits. Saint Emperor Bai looked anxious. He could only pin his hopes on the four evil spirits. The Baisheng dynasty was the Bai family's blood, sweat, and tears. He could not bear to see it destroyed. If the four evil spirits could arrive in time, the Baisheng dynasty might be saved. I'm afraid it's too late. Saint Emperor Bai had just finished speaking when another voice came from outside the hall. When the officials heard the voice, they looked outside the hall warily. Who was outside the hall? Saint Emperor Bai's face tensed up when he heard the voice outside the hall. He immediately shouted, "Where are the Imperial Guards? Protect the Emperor." Saint Emperor Bai felt uneasy and immediately summoned the Imperial Guards. The Imperial Guard were the elites of the Baisheng dynasty. They were made up of 100 martial sages and 10 martial gods. These martial sages had been through life and death situations. They were all experts who could fight against 2 or even 3 people at the same time. Furthermore, the equipment on his body was specially forged. These Imperial Guards were definitely capable of fighting twice or even thrice the number of opponents of the same level. At this critical moment, Saint Bai's first thought was the Imperial Guards. However, no one responded to him after he shouted. The civil and military officials in the hall all took out their weapons and warily looked outside. Where are the Imperial Guards? Protect me. Seeing that no one was paying any attention to him, Sage Emperor Bai coldly shouted once more. You must be looking for them. Bang, bang, bang. As soon as the voice outside the door fell, a golden figure shot into the hall. It's the Imperial Guards. It's over. The Imperial Guards are all dead. How can it be? There's no movement at all. How could the Imperial Guards be sacrificed? The officials discussed anxiously with fear in their eyes. Many of the ministers began to tremble uncontrollably. That was the fear of death. After all, they knew that the Imperial Guards of the Bai, Shang dynasty, were powerful and terrifying. However, all the corpses of the Imperial Guards were lying in the hall. This could only mean that the enemy outside the hall was more powerful and terrifying than the Imperial Guards. Suddenly, a figure walked in from outside the hall. Everyone's gaze immediately gathered on that figure. To everyone's surprise, the newcomer was a young man wearing a platinum dragon robe. The young man's every movement was filled with confidence and dominance. The young man's sharp gaze swept across the officials in the hall, but no one dared to look him in the eye. That's right, it was Yi Hao. You are young Emperor Yin Long? Saint Emperor Bai stared at Yi Hao, his eyes filled with killing intent and hatred. Vengeance for his son's death immediately filled Saint Emperor Bai's heart. Yi Hao didn't say anything. He looked at Saint Bai and Saint Emperor quietly. Back then, he had almost died at the hands of Bai Wu because of Saint Bai's orders. Back then, he had sworn to destroy the Bai Shang holy dynasty. Plop! At this moment, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. Even Yi Hao was dumbfounded. He originally thought that Saint Bai and Saint Emperor would fight him to the death. Instead, Saint Emperor Bai stood up from his dragon throne and knelt on the ground. The jaws of the civil and military officials dropped to the ground. What was going on? Was this the same Saint Emperor Bai that they knew, who was high above the masses and held the power of life and death in his hands? Young Emperor Yin Long, I've heard so much about you. I finally get to meet you today, Saint Emperor Bai said with a fawning expression. Everyone almost vomited at the sight of Saint Bai and Saint Emperor. They couldn't reconcile the Saint Emperor Bai in front of them with the unsmiling Saint Emperor Bai of the past. This was more than just a completely different person. The current Saint Emperor Bai was completely shameless and had no regard for his reputation at all. He actually knelt in front of a young man who was so much younger than him in his own court, and with a fawning expression. They all wondered if Saint Emperor Bai was ignoring them. Then I'd like to hear an explanation for the million pieces of trash. You had to know what Saint Emperor Bai was up to, but he still asked with a murderous look in his eyes. He didn't believe that Saint Emperor Bai, the emperor of a sacred dynasty, had a grudge against him for killing his son. Even if he had changed, he couldn't have changed so quickly and so completely. Saint Emperor Bai didn't feel good to hear that the million men he'd painstakingly trained had become trash in Yi Hao's mouth. Saint Emperor Bai felt a pang of pain at the thought of his million men. After all, they were his blood, sweat, and tears. Saint Emperor Bai lowered his head, the murderous look in his eyes obvious. But he still lifted his head and said with a smile, Young Emperor Yin Long, please understand. That has nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with you? Yi Hao raised an eyebrow and looked at Saint Emperor Bai with interest. He liked to see what other excuses Saint Emperor Bai could come up with. Saint Emperor Bai's eyes darted around as he tried to think of a solution. Suddenly, Saint Emperor Bai's eyes lit up. He pointed at the officials and said, It's them. They misled me and made me make the wrong decision. The officials looked at Saint Emperor Bai in shock. They couldn't believe their ears. They couldn't believe that Saint Emperor Bai would push the blame to them at such a critical moment. Saint Emperor Bai, you're so shameless. We've been loyal to you, but you've harmed us like this. One of the generals couldn't stand it anymore. He pointed at Saint Emperor Bai and scolded him. How dare you scold me? Saint Emperor Bai's face changed when he heard the general's words. He blew his beard and glared at him. So what if I'm scolding you? You're the emperor of a sacred dynasty, but you're kneeling on the ground like a dog. Don't you have any shame? You're a disgrace to the sacred dynasty, a disgrace to all the previous emperors. Since they've fallen out, the general didn't hold back anymore. That's right. I don't know how our sacred dynasty ended up in the hands of a weak and incapable emperor like you. It's all our fault for being so blind. We've been loyal to you for so long." The civil and military officials spoke one after another, their faces filled with anger. You traitors! The Baisheng Holy Dynasty was infuriated when he was scolded by so many of his officials and they didn't give him any face. He felt like his lungs were about to explode. If he could, he'd kill these people immediately. "Young Emperor Yinlong, did you see that? They don't care about me at all. They're the ones who instigated this." Saint Emperor Bai looked mad. Smack! 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 Chapter 592. Men, report the news to the 4 evil spirits. Saint Emperor Bai looked anxious. He could only pin his hopes on the 4 evil spirits. The Baisheng dynasty was the Bai family's blood, sweat, and tears. He could not bear to see it destroyed. If the 4 evil spirits could arrive in time, the Baisheng dynasty might be saved. I'm afraid it's too late. Saint Emperor Bai had just finished speaking when another voice came from outside the hall. When the officials heard the voice, they looked outside the hall warily. Who was outside the hall? Saint Emperor Bai's face tensed up when he heard the voice outside the hall. He immediately shouted, "We're the Imperial Guards. Protect the Emperor." Saint Emperor Bai felt uneasy and immediately summoned the Imperial Guards. The Imperial Guards were the elites of the Baisheng dynasty. They were formed by 100 martial sages and 10 martial gods. These martial sages had been through life and death situations. They were all experts who could fight against 2 or even 3 people at the same time. Furthermore, the equipment on his body was specially forged. These Imperial Guards were definitely capable of fighting twice or even thrice the number of opponents of the same level. At this critical moment, Saint Bai's first thought was the Imperial Guards. However, no one responded to him after he shouted. The civil and military officials in the hall all took out their weapons and warily looked outside. "We're the Imperial Guards. Protect me." Seeing that no one was paying any attention to him, Sage Emperor Bai coldly shouted once more. "You're looking for them, right?" Bang! 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 As soon as the voice outside the door fell, a golden figure shot into the hall. "Those are the Imperial Guards." "Oh no, the Imperial Guards are all dead." "How is that possible? There is no movement at all. How could the Imperial Guards be sacrificed?" The officials discussed anxiously with fear in their eyes. Many of the ministers began to tremble uncontrollably. That was the fear of death. After all, they knew how powerful and terrifying the Imperial Guards were. However, all the Imperial Guards' corpses were lying in the hall. This could only mean that the enemy outside the hall was more powerful and terrifying than the Imperial Guards. Suddenly, a figure walked in from outside the hall. Everyone's gaze immediately gathered on that figure. To everyone's surprise, the newcomer was a young man wearing a platinum dragon robe. The young man's every movement was filled with confidence and dominance. The young man's sharp gaze swept across the officials in the hall, but no one dared to look him in the eye. That's right, it was Yi Hao. "You are young Emperor Yinlong?" Saint Emperor Bai stared at Yi Hao, his eyes filled with killing intent and hatred. Vengeance for his son's death immediately filled Saint Emperor Bai's heart. Yi Hao didn't say anything. He looked at Saint Bai and Saint Emperor quietly. Back then, he had almost died at the hands of Bai Wu because of Saint Bai's orders. Back then, he had sworn to destroy the Baisheng Holy Dynasty. Plop! At this moment, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. Even Yi Hao was dumbfounded. He originally thought that Saint Bai and Saint Emperor would fight him to the death. Instead, Saint Emperor Bai stood up from his dragon throne and knelt on the ground. The jaws of the civil and military officials dropped to the ground. What was going on? Was this the same Saint Emperor Bai that they knew, who was high above the masses and held the power of life and death in his hands? "Young Emperor Yinlong, I've heard so much about you. I finally get to meet you today," Saint Emperor Bai said with a fawning expression. Everyone almost vomited at the sight of Saint Emperor Bai's behavior. They couldn't reconcile the Saint Emperor Bai in front of them with the unsmiling Saint Emperor Bai of the past. This was more than just a completely different person. The current Saint Emperor Bai was completely shameless and had no regard for his reputation at all. How could he kneel in front of a young man who was so much younger than him in his own court? They all wondered if Saint Emperor Bai was ignoring them. Then I'd like to hear an explanation for the million pieces of trash. He had to know what Saint Emperor Bai was up to, but he still asked with a murderous look in his eyes. He didn't believe that Saint Emperor Bai, the emperor of a sacred dynasty, had a grudge against him for killing his son. Even if he had changed, he couldn't have changed so quickly and so completely. Saint Emperor Bai was upset to hear that the million men he'd painstakingly trained had been reduced to trash in Yi Hao's mouth. Saint Emperor Bai felt a pang of pain at the thought of his million men. After all, they were his blood, sweat, and tears. Saint Emperor Bai lowered his head, the murderous look in his eyes obvious. But he still lifted his head and said with a smile, "Young Emperor Yin Long, please understand. That has nothing to do with me." "Nothing to do with you?" Yi Hao raised an eyebrow and looked at Saint Emperor Bai with interest. He'd like to see what other excuses Saint Emperor Bai could come up with. Saint Emperor Bai's eyes darted around as he tried to think of a countermeasure. Suddenly, Saint Emperor Bai's eyes lit up. He pointed at the officials and said, "It's them. They misled me and made me make the wrong decision." The officials looked at Saint Emperor Bai in shock. They couldn't believe their ears. They couldn't believe that Saint Emperor Bai would push the blame to them at such a critical moment. "Saint Emperor Bai, you're shameless. We've been loyal to you, but you've harmed us like this." One of the generals couldn't take it anymore. He pointed at Saint Emperor Bai and scolded him. "How dare you scold me?" Saint Emperor Bai's face changed when he heard the general's words. He blew his beard and glared at him. "So what if I'm scolding you? You're the emperor of a sacred dynasty, but you're kneeling on the ground like a dog. Do you have any shame? You're a disgrace to the sacred dynasty, a disgrace to all the previous emperors." Since they've fallen out, the general didn't hold back anymore. "That's right. I don't know how our sacred dynasty ended up in the hands of a weak and incapable emperor like you. It's all our fault for being so blind. We've been loyal to you for so long." The civil and military officials spoke one after another, their faces filled with anger. You traitors!" The Baisheng Holy Dynasty was infuriated when he was scolded by so many of his officials and they didn't give him any face. He felt like his lungs were about to explode. If he could, he'd kill them all. "Young Emperor Yin Long, did you see that? They don't care about me at all. They're the ones who instigated this." Saint Emperor Bai looked mad. Smack! 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 Chapter 593. Today was supposed to be a normal day, with me going to work and writing my novel. Who would have thought that today would be the saddest day in Zhu Chen's life? Zhu Chen still didn't dare believe that the father who loved me the most had passed away. Yesterday, we were still chatting. Today, we were separated by life and death. But I just didn't want to believe it. I really hoped that this was a nightmare, so that I could wake up from it quickly. Today was the 3rd of the month, which was supposed to be when the royalties came out. I was a bit nervous and expectant. I was nervous that it wouldn't be much, but I was looking forward to breaking through last month's royalties so that I could show off in front of my father and make him happy. Last year, Zhu Chen was still immature, but today I knew that my father was the happiest when his grandson made money and became capable. Seeing his father smile when he heard that Zhu Chen could make money by writing novels was Zhu Chen's greatest joy. But today, when the royalties came out at 10, they exceeded Zhu Chen's expectations. I should have been happy, but I couldn't. All I could do was cry, because I couldn't share the joy of the royalties with my father, and I couldn't see his smile. My father was genuinely happy for his grandson. I instantly felt that everything was meaningless. I never dared to think that my father would pass away so early. He should have at least waited for Zhu Chen to get married and have children. But reality was just that cruel. No one could escape death. My father passed away just like that. I still remember how my father woke me up at 4:50 in the morning. He said that he was sick and couldn't breathe. I immediately called my mother over. She said that my father had a stroke and was going to prick his finger until it bled. Zhu Chen checked online. This was just a rumor. It was useless. At the same time, she called an ambulance. Zhu Chen thought, that as long as the ambulance came, my father would be saved. But when the doctor came, Ju Chun thought he saw hope. But after 30 minutes of resuscitation, it was still. Ju Chun dearly wished that he could turn into a pig trotter in a novel and cure my father. But reality was reality. Ju Chun couldn't do anything. Thinking back to everything that had happened, Ju Chun was filled with regret. In the past, he always thought that he would have a lot of time to spend with his father. He basically went out to play during his break, so he didn't spend much time with him. It was just a short chat after work. But no matter how much he regretted it, my father had already passed away. No matter how much Ju Chun misses his father, he won't be able to see the father who dotes on him. How many people only understood this sentence after they had lost their parents in order to provide for their children? Just as Ju Chun was about to start earning money, he was about to use the money he earned to buy good food for his father. But father, you left, father. How could you bear to leave your grandson like this? You didn't even give your grandson a chance to show filial piety to you. Brothers and sisters, listen to Ju Chun's advice. Don't be willful anymore. Follow your own mood and vent your anger on your family. You must cherish your loved ones around you. Don't wait until you lose them before you regret it. Ju Chun didn't know if there was a heaven in this world. But father, your grandson misses you. If father misses your grandson too, then let's meet in your dreams and have a good chat. Father, since you like to drink, your grandson will drink with you in your dreams. Father, rest in peace. I can't bear to part with you. Chapter 594. After the Eastern Shah god gave the order, he led 1,000 martial gods and 100,000 martial saints to take a detour from the Honda sacred dynasty toward the Fire Dragon Empire. The North, West, and South evil gods led an army of 1 billion and slowly set off toward the Bishing sacred dynasty. Yi Hao probably didn't expect us to take a detour. The Alliance Master's action will definitely ruin Yi Hao's wishful thinking. By the time Yi Hao realizes it, the Fire Dragon Empire will have already been destroyed by the Alliance Master. That's right. It's rare for the 4 evil gods to act together. Now, we'll definitely attack the Fire Dragon Empire. The North, South, and South evil gods look nostalgic. One had to know that the 4 evil spirits' subordinates handled everything. The 4 evil gods rarely acted. Because the 4 fiends' divine union was a powerful existence, there was almost no difficult problem that would require their help. In history, the only time the 4 evil gods acted together was when they devoured the demon god. Since then, the 4 evil gods had never acted together again. It could be said that the 4 evil gods hadn't acted together for 10,000 years. This time, the Fire Dragon Empire was able to force the 4 of them to act. It was obvious that the Fire Dragon Empire was a threat to them. Come, let's drink to our Alliance Master's victory. The Western evil god took out some spiritual wine and said to the North and South evil gods, "Your Majesty's foresight is amazing. The spies have sent news that the Eastern evil god is leading the experts of the 4 evil spirits toward the Honda sacred dynasty." Guan Yu walked into the Bishing sacred dynasty's main hall and said with admiration. At first, when Yi Hao told him that the 4 evil spirits might take a detour and not attack from the Bishing sacred dynasty, he didn't believe it. After all, the 4 evil spirits were so powerful that they could attack the Fire Dragon Empire in one go. Why would they take a detour? It was unnecessary, but he did not expect that Yi Hao's guess would actually come true. That's great. Hearing Guan Yu's words, Yi Hao immediately smiled and said, "We can catch them all in one fell swoop." Could it be that His Majesty has already prepared his men? Guan Yu looked at Yi Hao in shock. Just wait for a good show. Yi Hao's lips curled into an unfathomable smile. Seeing Yi Hao smile, Guan Yu couldn't help but shudder. He had a feeling that something big was about to happen. Alliance Master, the Hongda sacred dynasty is right in front of us. Should we go through or let our brothers rest for a while? Western Shah Shun looked in the direction of the Hong, the sacred dynasty. Directly, Alliance Master, the messenger of the Hongda dynasty, is here. Just as the Eastern Shah deity was about to say that he wanted everyone to pass through the Hongda sacred dynasty, a martial sage came over to report. An envoy from the Honda sacred dynasty? What are you doing here? Eastern Sha deity frowned and said, could it be that they have something against me when I pass through the Honda sacred dynasty? Eastern Sha deity's tone was filled with killing intent. If the Honda's sacred dynasty dared to offend him, he wouldn't mind killing them off. In his eyes, the Honda's sacred dynasty was not worth mentioning. The only problem was that it might attract the attention of the Fire Dragon Empire. However, he didn't care. If they really pissed him off, he couldn't care less. Alliance Master, the people from the Honda sacred dynasty don't seem to be looking for trouble with you. Oh, let him come over then. Eastern Sha deity's interest was piqued when he heard his subordinate's words. I am Ding Bao from the Honda sacred dynasty. Greetings, Alliance Master Eastern Sha deity. When Ding Bao saw Eastern Sha deity, he immediately smiled and flattered him. Eastern Sha deity looked at Ding Bao and nodded his head slightly. I am here on behalf of His Majesty to invite the Eastern Demon Alliance leader to the Honda Holy Dynasty to rest for a while. His Majesty has already prepared drinks for the brothers of the Eastern Demon Alliance, Ding Bao said flatteringly. Alliance Master, this. When the soldiers of the four evil spirits heard Ding Bao's words, they looked at Eastern Sha deity with a tempted expression. Eastern Sha deity wanted to reject, but when he saw the anticipation on his subordinates' faces, he couldn't bring himself to reject them. After all, these subordinates had been traveling day and night for more than 10 days. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please look at it tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. Chapter 595. After the Eastern Sha god gave the order, he led 1,000 martial gods and 100,000 martial saints to take a detour from the Honda sacred dynasty toward the Fire Dragon Empire. The northern, western, and southern Sha gods led an army of 1 billion and slowly headed toward the Bishing sacred dynasty. Yi Hao probably didn't expect us to take a detour, The Alliance Master's action will definitely ruin Yi Hao's wishful thinking. By the time Yi Hao realizes it, the Fire Dragon Empire will have already been destroyed by the Alliance Master. That's right. The four Sha gods only appear once in 10,000 years. Now that we're here, we'll definitely destroy the Fire Dragon Empire. The northern, western, and southern Sha gods looked nostalgic. One had to know that the four evil spirits' subordinates handled everything. The four Sha gods rarely took action. Because the Four Fiends' divine union was a powerful existence, there was almost no difficult problem that would require their help. In history, the only time the four Sha gods took action together was during the devouring demon god incident. Since then, the four Sha gods had never taken action together. It could be said that the four Sha gods hadn't taken action together for 10,000 years. Now that the Fire Dragon Empire was able to force the four of them to take action, it showed how much of a threat the Fire Dragon Empire posed to them. Come, let's drink to celebrate the Alliance Master's victory. The Western Sha god took out some spiritual wine and said to the Northern and Southern Sha gods, "Your Majesty's foresight is amazing. The spies have sent news that the Eastern Sha god is leading the experts of the four evil spirits toward the Honda Sacred Dynasty." Guan Yu walked into the Bishing Sacred Dynasty's main hall and said with admiration. At first, when Yi Hao told him that the four evil spirits might take a detour and not attack from the Bishing Sacred Dynasty, he didn't believe it. After all, the four evil spirits were so powerful that they could attack the Fire Dragon Empire in one go. Why would they take a detour? It was unnecessary, but he didn't expect Yi Hao's guess to come true. That's great. Hearing Guan Yu's words, Yi Hao immediately smiled and said, "We can catch them all in one fell swoop." Could it be that His Majesty has already prepared his men? Guan Yu looked at Yi Hao in shock. Just wait for a good show. Yi Hao's lips curled into an unfathomable smile. Seeing Yi Hao smile, Guan Yu couldn't help but shudder. He had a feeling that something big was about to happen. Alliance Master, the Hongda Sacred Dynasty is right in front of us. Should we pass through or let our brothers rest for a while? Western Sha Shun looked in the direction of the Hong, this sacred dynasty. Directly, Alliance Master, the messenger of the Hongda dynasty, is here. Just as the Eastern Sha deity was about to say that he wanted everyone to pass through the Hongda sacred dynasty, a martial sage came over to report. An envoy from the Hongda sacred dynasty? What are you doing here? Eastern Sha deity frowned and said, "Could it be that they have something against me when I pass through the Hongda sacred dynasty?" Eastern Sha deity's tone was filled with killing intent. If the Hongda sacred dynasty dared to offend him, he wouldn't mind killing them off. In his eyes, the Hongda sacred dynasty was not worth mentioning. The only problem was that it might attract the attention of the Fire Dragon Empire. However, he didn't care. If they really pissed him off, he couldn't care less. Alliance Master, the people from the Hongda Sacred Dynasty don't look like they are looking for trouble with you. Oh, let him come over then. Eastern Sha deity's interest was piqued when he heard his subordinate's words. "I am Ding Bao from the Hongda Sacred Dynasty. Greetings, Alliance Master Eastern Sha deity." When Ding Bao saw Eastern Sha deity, he immediately smiled and tried to flatter him. Eastern Sha deity looked at Ding Bao and nodded his head slightly. "I am here on behalf of His Majesty to invite the Eastern Demon Alliance leader to the Hongda Sacred Dynasty to rest for a while. His Majesty has already prepared drinks for the brothers of the Eastern Demon Alliance," Ding Bao said flatteringly. "Alliance Master, this." When the soldiers of the four evil spirits heard Ding Bao's words, they looked at Eastern Sha deity with a tempted expression. Eastern Sha deity wanted to reject the invitation. However, when he saw the anticipation on his subordinates' faces, he couldn't bring himself to reject them. After all, these subordinates had been traveling day and night for more than 10 days. "I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. I rushed the whole day to send my father home. I didn't have time to write. I'm still short of 1.5 pieces. I'll rush over tonight. Brothers, please take a look tomorrow. I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. Chapter 596. Back then, you wiped out my Zhongsheng Empire. You didn't expect this day to come, did you? It doesn't feel good, right? Thinking of the past, East Shagad had ordered the massacre of Zhongsheng Empire. Zhongsheng Empire was covered in smoke, and blood flowed like rivers. Until now, he still couldn't forget it. It was a hatred that he could never forget. It was also a nightmare that he couldn't forget. Thinking of the tragic scene back then, he couldn't control the tears in his eyes. That was a huge blow to him. Everyone with the Zhong family bloodline was wiped out. Even those with a trace of the Zhong family bloodline were wiped out. In the end, he was the only survivor of Zhongsheng Empire. But to him, being alone was worse than certain death. Because back then, as long as he closed his eyes, he could see the people of Zhongsheng Empire crying for help in front of him. But in the end, they couldn't escape the fate of being slaughtered by the 4 evil spirits. Every day, he thought that he had caught the culprits so quickly. At this moment, East Sha God's life was in his hands. Leave. Suddenly, God Emperor Zong waved his hand at East Sha God and turned around. What? You letting me go? East Sha God was surprised to hear God Emperor Zong's words. He had heard that God Emperor Zong was a kind person, but he didn't expect it to be true. God Emperor Zong is indeed, as the rumors say. You're a good person, a role model for the younger generation. East Sha God said and turned to leave. Bring me a bow, an arrow. God Emperor Zong said when he heard the commotion behind him. A guard took out a bow and arrow and handed it to God Emperor Zong. Swoosh! God Emperor Zong aimed at East Sha God's back and shot an arrow at his left shoulder. East Sha God couldn't take it and fell to the ground. This is because you indiscriminately attacked my Zong holy empire. God Emperor Zong said as he looked at East Sha God, who fell to the ground. Stand up. As long as you run out of this courtyard, I'll let you go. God Emperor Zong pointed the arrow at East Sha God's head and said with tears in his eyes. These tears represented the resentment in his heart. He was unwilling to accept the fact that Zong Shanghua had been slaughtered by the 4 evil spirits for no reason, and he was powerless to do anything about it. He hated the Eastern Fiend God. He hated all the four evil spirits who had their hands stained with the blood of the Holy Empire. The Eastern Fiend God could feel the intense pain coming from his left button, almost causing him to faint. Feeling the blood flowing down his back and chest, the East Fiend God turned to look at Emperor Zong. He saw that Emperor Zong's bow was aimed at his head. The East Sha deity looked at himself and realized that he was still a few hundred meters away from escaping. He didn't want to die yet. Eastern Fiend God gritted his teeth and stood up shakily, running forward. This arrow is for the citizens of Zhongsheng Nation who died for no reason. Swish! As soon as God Emperor Zong finished speaking, the arrow in his hand left the bow and shot toward the East Sha deity's right shoulder. Hearing the sound of something tearing through the air behind him, the East Fiend God had an anxious look on his face. However, he also knew that he would not be able to dodge the attacks of a martial God realm expert without any cultivation. He tried his best to widen his strides so that he could run a few more steps. PFFF. The arrow suddenly shot into his right shoulder. Struck by the huge impact, the East Fiend God couldn't control himself and fell to the ground again. The East Fiend God felt his mind go blank in an instant. He wanted to sleep for a while more, but God Emperor Zong's words rang in his ears again. Get up. The East Fiend God had no choice but to get up. However, his shoulders were no longer able to support him. After spending a long time, he finally managed to stand up shakily. He looked at the exit in front of him. As long as he could escape there, he would be saved. I want to live. Ignoring the intense pain in his body, the East Fiend God could only take a few more steps with difficulty. He only wanted to take a few more steps before God Emperor Zong shot the next arrow. This was because the more steps he took, the more hope he would have to survive. He had never thought that he, the East Fiend God of the four evil spirits, would one day be reduced to such a state. This was definitely something that he had never dreamed of. After all, given his status, only he had the right to control the life and death of others in the 10,000 Lands continent. It wasn't that there weren't any people who could control his life and death, but they were definitely few and far between. He had never thought that he would stumble and suffer such a huge loss here. He didn't doubt that God Emperor Zong would kill him. This was because the killing intent in God Emperor Zong's eyes couldn't be faked. After all, this was the enmity of annihilating a country and severing a person's bloodline. This was absolutely irreconcilable. Although his chances of survival were slim, he only wished to live. Even if there was only a sliver of hope, he didn't want to let it go. This was like a billionaire in front of a terminal illness. Even if he knew that his chances of survival weren't high, he still wouldn't let go of a chance. How rare was it for the East Fiend God to reach such a position? How could he bear to die? After all, his authority was definitely in the top 10 in the 10,000 Lands continent. If he died, there would be nothing left. This arrow is for you to slaughter my bloodline clansmen. Swish! God Emperor Zong had just finished speaking when another arrow shot into the East Fiend God's left leg. This arrow is for you to destroy my Zong family's emperor's legacy. Swish! After God Emperor Zong finished speaking, another arrow shot into the East Fiend God's right leg. The East Fiend God fell to the ground. But this time, he couldn't stand up. The East Fiend God panted heavily and could only move his body with difficulty. Now that the East Fiend God's arms and legs were crippled, he was clearly a cripple. But even if he was a cripple, the East Fiend God still wanted to live. God Emperor Zong looked coldly at the East Fiend God, who was crawling with difficulty, leaving a bloody path that was more than 10 meters long. God Emperor Zong looked at the East Fiend God quietly. Looking at the miserable state of the East Fiend God, God Emperor Zong didn't feel much emotion. Similarly, he didn't feel the joy of revenge. Because even if he killed the East Fiend God, he wouldn't be able to save everyone in Zhongshan Empire. But even so, it didn't mean that God Emperor Zong would let the East Fiend God off. Looking at the East Fiend God crawling towards the exit, God Emperor Zong wasn't in a hurry to shoot. He was waiting. He wanted to give the East Fiend God a sliver of hope to live. Then, when the East Fiend god saw hope, he would kill him, because this was the cruelest way to kill. But at the same time, it could also resolve the hatred in his heart. 10 meters, 9 meters, 8 meters, 3 meters, 2 meters. Go to hell. I did it swish. Just as the East Fiend god crawled to the edge of the exit, his face revealed the joy of being able to live. At this moment, a deafening sound pierced through the air. The East Fiend god's face changed drastically. The joy on his face disappeared, leaving behind only panic and anxiety. Chapter 597. Poof! Rumble. 2 consecutive sounds rang out. One was the sound of an arrow piercing into the body of the East Shah god. The other was the sound of an arrow piercing through the body of the East Shah god and into the ground. Cough, cough, cough. Suddenly, the East Shah god started coughing violently. The East Shah god still wanted to crawl forward, but his body was nailed to the ground. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. He couldn't move his body at all. Furthermore, the more he struggled, the more the arrow pierced through his wounds. The pain was so excruciating that he almost fainted. Tap, tap, tap. Hearing the footsteps, the East Shah god turned his head weakly. Looking at the murderous Emperor Zong, he begged, "Please let me go. I don't want to die." "You don't want to die, but do the people of Zongsheng Empire want to die? Did you think about their pleas?" Emperor Zong shouted coldly at the East Shah god. The East Shah god's face changed. He continued, "How about this? I'll give you half of the forces of the 4 evil spirits. What do you think?" In order to survive, the East Shah god was willing to go all out. Furthermore, as long as he could leave this place alive, the wounds on his body could be healed instantly. After that, he would have to torture Emperor Zong and Yi Hao to death, because based on Emperor Zong's words, he could deduce that Yi Hao was definitely involved in this matter. However, Emperor Zong wouldn't give him a chance. The arrow in his hand was pointed at the East Shah god's head. Die. As soon as Emperor Zong finished speaking, the arrow pierced through the East Shah god's head. However, no one had expected that the renowned East demon deity would die just like that without a sound. Furthermore, the encounter before his death was so tragic. "People of Zongsheng Empire, I've taken revenge for you." Emperor Zong looked at the dead East Shah god. The bow in his hand fell to the ground. Emperor Zong knelt on the ground and roared into the sky. However, Emperor Zong still took out a voice transmission talisman and sent a message to Yi Hao. As for how Emperor Zong got to know Yi Hao, it was just a coincidence. Back then, Emperor Zong had entered an adversity in order to escape. In the secret grounds, Emperor God Zong did not obtain anything else, but he did obtain some strange poisons. This time around, the reason why the Eastern Shah deity was unable to use his martial power was because of the medicine he had obtained from the mystic realm. After leaving the secret realm, he looked for opportunities to think of a way to take revenge on the 4 evil spirits. What he didn't expect was that the 4 evil spirits were attacking the Fire Dragon Empire, so he immediately rushed to the Fire Dragon Empire. It was also because of this that he coincidentally met Yi Hao. Originally, he had begged Yi Hao to let him stay and fight against the Eastern Shah deity together. However, Yi Hao had told him that the East Shah deity might attack the Fire Dragon Empire from the Hongda Sacred Dynasty. At first, he didn't believe it, but it really happened. Yi Hao first sent people to take over Hong the Shang Dynasty, then used the 1,000 illusion mask to transform into Hong the Shang Emperor and took the opportunity to drug the food. All of this was done naturally, without the slightest flaw. Until now, he still felt like a lifetime had passed. He had actually killed the Eastern Shah deity with his own hands. "Your Majesty, you have helped me take revenge. From now on, I will follow you to death." Emperor Godzong immediately swore as Yi Hao appeared in his mind. Seeing the news from Emperor Godzong, Yi Hao didn't expect things to go so smoothly, so he immediately shouted, "Good!" After all, the biggest threat of the 4 fiends' divine union had already been eliminated by him. Therefore, the remaining members of the 4 fiends' divine union weren't worth mentioning. "Your Majesty, why are you so happy? Guan Yu looked at Yi Hao and asked curiously. Actually, he had been anxious to death these few days, because he knew that the four evil spirits, the Eastern Sha deity, had brought experts from the Honda's sacred dynasty to attack Yin Long. Logically speaking, it should have been about time. However, after waiting for a long time, Yi Hao still hadn't made a move. He was really afraid that he would suddenly receive news that the Fire Dragon Empire had been destroyed. Although the 1 billion soldiers in front of him were powerful, they were not worth mentioning when compared to the experts of the four evil spirits. He didn't understand why Yi Hao was still wasting time here at a time like this. Could it be that Yi Hao didn't care about the Fire Dragon Empire and insisted on fighting the 1 billion soldiers? However, even if he killed the 1 billion soldiers, if the Eastern Sha deity brought his men to destroy the Fire Dragon Empire, then everything would be in vain. Good news! The Eastern Sha deity, his 100,000 martial sages, and 1,000 martial gods have all been destroyed. Yi Hao said happily. Seeing Yi Hao's smiling face, Guan Yu was obviously stunned. He was still worried and asked tentatively, Your Majesty, are you saying that the Eastern Sha deity has been destroyed? That's right. Seeing how certain Yi Hao was, Guan Yu was even more stunned. 100,000 martial sages and 1,000 martial gods were definitely not a small number. No matter who they were fighting, it would definitely be a big battle. However, they had all been destroyed without a sound. How could anyone believe it? After all, this wasn't something that could be laughed about. Pass down my orders. The remnants of the four evil spirits. Yi Hao gathered his soldiers and ordered. What did you say? The Fire Dragon Empire actually attacked me. The Western Sha deity, who was chatting with the Northern and Southern Sha deity, was shocked when he heard the news. At this time, shouldn't Yi Hao continue to lie in ambush in the Bishing sacred dynasty and wait for him to come? Could it be that he was too slow in advancing? The Western Sha deity analyzed for a long time and could only come up with this reason. However, he didn't care. Since the Fire Dragon Empire is so anxious to die, I can't not help. It's a good chance to attract Yi Hao's attention and allow the Alliance Master to attack from Honda Sacred City. Based on the Alliance Master's speed, he should be arriving at the Fire Dragon Empire soon. Yi Hao probably doesn't know yet, said the Southern Sha deity proudly. Yi Hao is really arrogant. He actually dares to take the initiative to attack. He really doesn't put us in his eyes. However, he'll regret it soon, said the Northern Sha deity proudly. Not good. 3 Sha deities. At this moment, one of the commanders suddenly shouted, Why are you in such a hurry? What are you doing? The 3 Sha deities were displeased when they saw the commander's appearance. 3 Sha deities, this lowly one knows his mistake. However, this lowly one really has an urgent matter, said the commander respectfully after straightening his clothes. Sirs, our left wing has encountered 5,000 martial god ancient beasts and 20,000 martial sacred realm experts. What? The 3 Sha deities stood up and asked in unison, Why didn't you report such a big matter earlier? The commander felt bitter when he heard the 3 Sha deities' words. Chapter 598. Hurry up and contact the Alliance leader. Let's see how he is doing. Western Devil God said anxiously. With the sudden appearance of so many experts, the remaining 1 billion soldiers of the four evil spirits would not be able to deal with them. Over 100,000 peak martial sages could kill 1 billion soldiers like a child's play. Western Devil God, I can't contact the Alliance leader. Northern Devil God took out his voice transmission talisman and said anxiously after a while. Same here. Southern Devil God took out his voice transmission talisman when he heard Northern Devil God. However, after a while, he also said anxiously, Let's order the soldiers to retreat first. Western Devil God said anxiously when he saw that he could not contact Eastern Devil God. With every delay, the soldiers of the four evil spirits would be killed or injured. However, when the Southern, Western, and Northern Devil Gods went out to take a look, they were dumbfounded. The flames of war were everywhere, and they could not tell who was on their side. How could they retreat? Eastern Devil God is dead. The four evil spirits must be defeated. Eastern Devil God is dead. The 4 evil spirits must be defeated. Eastern Devil God is dead. The 4 evil spirits must be defeated. The Alliance leader is dead. What should we do? Is this real? Where's the Alliance leader? Why hasn't he come out to retreat? Where are the experts of the 4 evil spirits? Why haven't they come out to save us? Hearing the shouts of the experts of the Fire Dragon Empire, the soldiers of the 4 evil spirits started to panic. Who dares to spout nonsense? I will kill him. Western Devil God shouted coldly. However, his shouts alone were not enough to control the situation. Could something have happened to the Alliance leader? Western Devil God thought guiltily when he heard the words of the experts of the Fire Dragon Empire. Logically speaking, Eastern Devil God should have responded quickly when he contacted him with his voice transmission talisman. However, the Southern, Western, and Northern Devil Gods had already contacted Eastern Devil God with their voice transmission talismans, but there was still no response. Furthermore, they had not only contacted Eastern Devil God, but also his trusted subordinates, Black Devil God, and the others. However, there was no response. You are courting death. Looking at the ancient mutated beast charging towards him, Western Demon God took out his weapon and attacked the ancient mutated beast. Boom! The Western Demon God took the opportunity and smashed his weapon into the head of the ancient beast. The head of the ancient mutated beast exploded, and its entire corpse fell onto the ground. As for the Southern Fiend Deity and the Northern Fiend Deity, they had each killed a primordial beast. Swish! Swish! Right at this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. Western Demon God instantly felt his hair stand on end. Just by feeling, he knew that the person behind him was definitely an expert. Western Demon God desperately tried to flee to the side. However, the ones who had attacked were Martial God level archers. Furthermore, it was 4 Martial God level archers. The 4 archers locked onto Western Demon God's body. If he was hit by the 4 of them, he would definitely die on the spot. Western Fiend, the Southern Demon Deity, and the Northern Demon Deity shouted, but it was too late. Boom! The Western Demon God was struck by the arrow and fell to the ground. Although Western Demon God dodged 2 of the 4 arrows, 2 of them still managed to hit him. Run! Seeing that the Western Demon Deity had fallen, the Southern Demon Deity and the Northern Demon Deity did not hesitate and immediately fled. However, no matter how fast they reacted, the 4 Martial God level archers had already drawn their bows and shot at the 2 of them. Giddy up! Giddy up! Giddy up! Giddy up! Right at this moment, another 4 cavalrymen of the Martial God level appeared. Their divine chariots soared into the sky and charged at the Southern Demon Deity and the Northern Demon Deity. Seeing the sudden appearance of the cavalrymen of the Martial God level, the Southern Demon Deity and the Northern Demon Deity immediately changed their direction. However, at this moment, another 2 soldiers of the Martial God level appeared beside them. Kill! Kill! The 2 soldiers shouted in unison and charged at the Southern Demon Deity and the Northern Demon Deity at the same time. The Southern Demon Deity and the Northern Demon Deity's faces instantly darkened. Being surrounded by so many experts, even if they had 3 heads and 6 arms, they would not be able to escape this calamity. Fight! The Southern Demon Deity made up his mind and stopped running. The Northern Demon Deity ignored the Southern Demon Deity and turned to flee. Just as the Northern Demon Deity thought that he had escaped and turned back to look, a shout suddenly came from in front of him. The Northern Demon Deity's heart tightened, and he immediately came back to his senses. However, he suddenly felt a pain in his chest. The Northern Demon Deity raised his head and saw a silver spear piercing through his chest. The Northern Demon Deity looked at the spearman in front of him unwillingly. However, it was too late. The Southern Demon Deity was in an even worse state. He was surrounded by 4 cavalrymen of the Martial God level and was trampled into shreds by the divine chariots of the cavalrymen. The 4 demons of the 4 evil spirits had all fallen at this moment. The battle that followed was a one-sided massacre. After all, the Fire Dragon Empire also had a large number of soldiers, although they were not as strong as the 4 evil spirits. However, with the suppression of the Fire Dragon Empire's experts, even if the four evil spirits were stronger than the Fire Dragon Empire's soldiers, they still could not gain the upper hand. In the end, 80% of the four evil spirits' soldiers were killed. The remaining 20% were all killed. Yi Hao did not relax after killing the soldiers of the Four Fiends' Divine Union. Although the Four Fiends had been killed, Yi Hao did not let his guard down. Although the four evil spirits were killed, there were still many survivors in the territory of the four evil spirits. According to Yi Hao's character, since he took action, he would clean it up once and for all. He would not leave any survivors. Yi Hao led half of Yin Chang's experts and rushed to the four evil spirits. In one night, the four evil spirits were massacred. In just a month, Yi Hao destroyed the Hongda's sacred dynasty, Bishing's sacred dynasty, and the four evil spirits. It was only when the four evil spirits were destroyed that the entire Myriad Kingdom continent reacted and fell into a state of shock. They thought that under the attack of the four evil spirits, the Fire Dragon Empire would definitely not be able to escape. They did not expect the Fire Dragon Empire to be so strong that it was the four evil spirits that were destroyed in the end. In the Myriad Kingdom continent, there is absolutely no one who did not know of the Four Fiends' Divine Alliance. Because the four evil spirits were the first sacred dynasty, the strongest faction under the Divine Rank faction. Moreover, the four evil spirits were the most promising sacred dynasty to become a Divine Rank faction. In the Myriad Kingdom continent, only the four Divine Kingdoms could deal with the four evil spirits. Even the four Divine Kingdoms would not be able to deal with the four evil spirits so easily. However, the four evil spirits that everyone had the impression of being very strong were easily destroyed by the Fire Dragon Empire. They were shocked and guessing what kind of background the Fire Dragon Empire had and how strong it was. It only took him a month to destroy the Four Fiends' Divine Alliance. Moreover, it was not only the four evil spirits that were destroyed, but also the Hongda's sacred dynasty and the Bishing sacred dynasty. Since the Fire Dragon Empire had destroyed the four evil spirits, it had truly become the first sacred dynasty under the Divine Rank faction. Moreover, the name of the first sacred dynasty was definitely worthy of its name. Not only was the Fire Dragon Empire's dragon power the strongest, it had also destroyed the four evil spirits. Chapter 599. My son has really done it. The imperial ant was shocked to hear that Yi Hao had destroyed the four evil spirits, but she was more than happy. She had been worried about Yi Hao for a long time, and she could finally relax. She did not expect that Yi Hao would be able to destroy the four evil spirits in just a month. She was proud of her son. She could already see the purple sky Divine Emperor's expression. It would definitely be like eating shit. A month ago, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor was still mocking Yi Hao, but a month later, Yi Hao had destroyed the four evil spirits. Moreover, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor had been guarding against her, afraid that she would support Yi Hao. But even without her help, Yi Hao could still do it. This was her son, and she was very pleased. She had not given up the territory in vain. Overall, he had gained more than the Purple Sky's Supreme God Emperor. After all, her son was the emperor of the first sacred dynasty. Impossible. Are the four evil spirits a bunch of good-for-nothings? How could they have been destroyed so easily? And Yi Hao, that little bastard, how could he be so powerful? And how long has the Fire Dragon Empire been developing? How could they have destroyed the four evil spirits? The Purple Sky Divine Emperor was fuming with rage in the Purple Sky Divine Palace. After hearing that Yi Hao had destroyed the four evil spirits, she could not control the anger in her heart. She absolutely could not tolerate that a little bastard, the disgrace of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom, could achieve so much. Because the stronger Yi Hao was, the greater the threat to her. After all, Yi Hao was the Imperial Ant's son. If Yi Hao was a good-for-nothing, no one would stop her from destroying the bastard for the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. However, the fact that Yi Hao had such great achievements at such a young age was a completely different story. Perhaps some of the ministers of the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom had seen Yi Hao's talent and accepted Yi Hao in the end. No, we can't let that bastard live. Purple Heaven Supreme God clenched his fists, his body flashing with killing intent. At this moment, she was completely filled with killing intent. He had tried to kill Yi Hao twice in a row, but the first time, the golden armored warriors he had sent had all disappeared. The second time, she placed her hopes on the 4 evil spirits. However, she didn't expect that the 4 evil spirits wouldn't be able to cause any damage to the Fire Dragon Empire. Instead, they were wiped out. This time, she had to kill Yi Hao. Could it be that you need me to do it personally? Purple Heaven Divine Emperor pondered. Xing, we will be in seclusion for a period of time. Don't let anyone disturb us. The Purple Heaven Supreme God immediately called for Xing. After giving her some instructions, he immediately flew towards the Fire Dragon Empire. This time, she planned to do it herself, because she had already seen the threat from Yi Hao. After all, Yi Hao was too young, and Yi Hao had grown too quickly. In just a few years, Yi Hao had grown from a young boy in a duchy to the emperor of the first sacred dynasty in the Myriad Kingdom continent. If this was in other countries, it would take at least a few thousand years, or even tens of thousands of years, to become a sacred dynasty. And even if it became a sacred dynasty, to become the first sacred dynasty, it would also take a lot of time. But Yi Hao, who had almost nothing, had become the first sacred dynasty in just a few years. Who knew if it would continue to develop rapidly? If it continued to develop, who knew when it would surpass the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom? So at this critical moment, she had to kill Yi Hao to eliminate the threat. Fire Dragon Empire. It's the Fire Dragon Empire again. At this moment, in the Zhentian Divine Kingdom, God Sun Jinwei was exasperated. Originally, as soon as he came out of the secret realm, he wanted to destroy the Fire Dragon Empire. But it was also a coincidence that God did not give him this opportunity at all. As soon as he came out of the secret realm, he immediately felt that his cultivation was about to loosen. So he had to temporarily give up attacking the Fire Dragon Empire and choose to go into seclusion. After all, at this level, if he wanted to break through again, the opportunity was hard to come by. And this was a great opportunity to break through. How could he bear to let it go? And this time, his seclusion was unusually smooth. Although his cultivation breakthrough was smooth, he still could not let go, and he still could not forget Yi Hao. Thus, at all times, he was thinking of killing Yi Hao to wash away his humiliation. And as soon as he came out of seclusion, he heard that the Fire Dragon Empire was in the limelight, and its name resounded throughout the Myriad Kingdom continent. At this moment, the anger in his heart was completely aroused. God Sun Jinwei left his seclusion place and immediately rushed to his father's residence. Son greets father. My son, how do you feel after your seclusion? Heaven-shaking Divine Emperor, after seeing God Sun Jinwei, had a happy smile on his face and his eyes were full of love. Father, everything went very smoothly. This time, son has an important matter to discuss with father. God Sun Jinwei was respectful in front of Heaven-shaking Divine Emperor. Oh, what's the matter? Heaven-shaking Divine Emperor looked at God Sun Jinwei curiously. He wanted to know what it was that could make Jinwei come to find him as soon as he broke through. Father, it's because of the Myriad Kingdom ceremony. Son wants to avenge my death. God Sun Jinwei's face was full of hatred at the thought of being killed by Yi Hao. His life had been smooth sailing. When had he ever been humiliated like that? Okay, I'll allow it. Heaven-shaking Divine Emperor did not refuse Jinwei's words at all because he loved God Sun Jinwei very much. Father, this time it's a little different. It seems a little tricky. I need father to send a lot of experts. God Sun Jinwei said. Different? How many experts do you need? Heaven-shaking Divine Emperor looked at God Sun Jinwei curiously because he had never seen God Sun Jinwei like this before. Father, the person I want to avenge is the Emperor of the Fire Dragon Empire. What? It's him? Heaven-shaking Divine Emperor was also deeply shocked by the person Jinwei wanted to avenge. After all, It was impossible for him not to know that the Fire Dragon Empire was in the limelight and became the #1 sacred dynasty in the Myriad Kingdom continent. If it was someone else, heaven-shaking Divine Emperor would not even think about it and would directly avenge Zhenwei. But this Fire Dragon Empire was indeed a little awkward. And for this rising star, the 4 divine nations did not react. They were waiting for others to make the first move and then explore the Fire Dragon Empire situation. Seeing a touch of hesitation on his father's face, Zhenwei was afraid that heaven-shaking Divine Emperor would regret it, so he immediately whispered to heaven-shaking Divine Emperor. It was obvious that heaven-shaking Divine Emperor's eyes slowly opened wide, obviously shocked by Zhenwei's whisper. And heaven-shaking Divine Emperor couldn't help but look at Zhenwei a few more times. "My son can't lie now. Is what he said true?" Chapter 600. Heaven-shaking Emperor God meditated for a moment and said, "My son, if that's the case, then we must capture Yihao." Father is wise. Hearing heaven-shaking Emperor God's words, God's son Zhenwei was delighted. He knew that with heaven-shaking Emperor God's words, the Fire Dragon Empire would not be able to escape. "My son, bring 200,000 martial sages and 2,000 martial gods. You must capture Yihao for me," heaven-shaking Emperor God ordered. Because he knew from Zhenwei that Yihao had an origin source fragment. Although he did not know what an origin source fragment was, he did not know what it was. But after studying it for a long time, he knew that the origin source fragment was definitely not an ordinary item. Even though he was a martial god realm expert, he could not inflict any damage to the primary fragment when he attacked it. Therefore, he felt that the origin source fragment might have some powerful cultivation technique recorded. But he used various methods and even found countless experts to comprehend it, but he could not comprehend it completely. Originally, he had given up on the origin source fragment and just kept it by his side. But through the Myriad Kingdom Grand Ceremony, he found out from Zhenwei that there were origin source fragments in secret realms. Of course, he knew that one origin source fragment could support countless secret realms. He was shocked. In the 10,000 Kingdoms continent, even a god-grade spatial treasure could not create so many secret realms. Moreover, it could imitate everything in the real world. Therefore, this origin source fragment was definitely above the god grade. And he had a feeling that gathering all the origin source fragments would definitely have a heaven-defying function. He had a crazy idea about what it was, but he did not dare to think about it, because it might be the opportunity to unify the Myriad Kingdom continent. That was why he sent so many experts to follow Zhenwei. As long as he could get the origin source fragment, it would be worth it even if all these martial gods and martial saints were sacrificed. "Father, I will definitely bring those things back." Seeing that heaven-shaking Emperor God had sent so many experts at once, Zhenwei was shocked. Zhenwei was also deeply surprised and said excitedly. At this moment, he could already see the scene of Yihao being trampled under his feet. "My son understands. Revenge is a small matter, but the items are a big matter." Heaven-shaking God Emperor was also a little worried. He was worried that Zhenwei would only think about revenge and delay the proper business. After all, as his father, how could he not know his son's nature? "Your Majesty, I have already sent people to collect the resources of the 3 sacred dynasties and transport them back to the Fire Dragon Empire." "Yes." Yihao nodded. He looked at the accounts in his hands and listened to his subordinate's report. One had to know that what he was most concerned about now was gathering resources, because only with resources could he exchange for experts. "I think some people won't be able to hold it in any longer." Yihao didn't look happy at all. Instead, his face was filled with worry. After all, the bird that pokes its head out will be shot. Although he had made a name for himself by eliminating the 4 evil spirits, it would also attract the attention of countless powerhouses. The first to bear the brunt were the 4 great divine empires, as well as the sacred empires that were eyeing the 4 evil spirits covetously. These forces definitely wouldn't just stand by and watch the Flame Dragon Empire grow without doing anything. Moreover, He had been feeling uneasy for the past few days. He felt that something big was about to happen. Therefore, he urgently needed to summon soldiers, although he didn't know what was going to happen next and who was going to attack. However, it was better to be prepared than not to be on guard. System, help me calculate the resources. Ding dong, the host has 7 billion tons of grain, 6 billion tons of stone, and 9 billion tons of wood. Currently, if the host exchanges all of them for martial gods, the host can exchange for 6,600 of them. So many, looks like the harvest is not bad. Looking at the resources that the system had calculated, one had to know that this was only a portion of the resources that had been transported back. These resources alone could be exchanged for 6,600 martial gods. If they were exchanged for martial saints, they could be exchanged for 660,000 martial saints. After just one battle, the Fire Dragon Empire's strength had increased by several times. Exchange for 2,600 martial gods, and the rest for 400,000 martial sages. Ding dong, does the host confirm the exchange? Exchange confirmed. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for completing the exchange. Please come to the barracks for inspection. Yi Hao counted all the martial gods he currently had. There were a total of 3,800 martial gods. As for martial sages, there were a total of 520,000 martial sages. Yi Hao, you son of a bitch, get out here. Just as Yi Hao was still communicating with the system, an arrogant voice suddenly exploded in the sky above the Fire Dragon Empire. They are indeed here. Hearing the voice from above, Yi Hao's lips curled into a strange smile. He didn't expect that Cao Cao would appear just as he spoke of him. This person who was courting death really couldn't stand being nagged. He had been thinking that the enemy might come, but he didn't expect it to be so soon. Yi Hao, you son of a bitch, come out and die quickly. Don't make me wait too long. Just as Yi Hao was thinking, Zhen Wei's impatient voice rang out again. Humph, you are courting death. He now had 3,800 martial gods and 520,000 martial sages. He didn't believe that even if Zhen Wei was the crown prince of the Divine Kingdom, the number of experts he brought could surpass his own. Yi Hao flew to the sky above the Fire Dragon Empire alone. In the sky, 9 Pegasus horses pulled a bright sedan, standing tall in the void. 9 Pegasi. Each Pegasi was covered in golden armor and looked majestic. The sedan behind the Pegasus was also golden. Zhen Wei was dressed in a golden crown prince robe, lying lazily on the sedan. At the same time, there were 2 beautiful girls massaging Zhen Wei's legs. Seeing Yi Hao come out, Zhen Wei yawned and said casually, You son of a bitch, do you still remember me? You didn't expect me to come to trouble you so early, did you? Come, son of a bitch, if you don't want your Fire Dragon Empire to be destroyed and your citizens to be slaughtered today, then kneel down and beg me obediently. Zhen Wei had 2,000 martial God Realm experts and 200,000 martial Saint Realm experts. Therefore, he was full of confidence in facing Yi Hao. He had already investigated clearly that the Fire Dragon Empire's forces were on par with the 4 evil spirits. Moreover, the Fire Dragon Empire had destroyed the 4 evil spirits using a strategy, not a direct battle at all. Therefore, in his opinion, the Fire Dragon Empire's forces might not be as strong as the 4 evil spirits. Therefore, with these subordinates behind him, he really didn't have to put Yi Hao in his eyes at all. Instead, he showed an expression that said he had Yi Hao under control. Chapter 601. Divine Son Zhen Wei roared. He wanted to put Yi Hao in his place. Following Zhen Wei's roar, countless experts immediately flew out from all directions, surrounding Yi Hao in the middle. Yi Hao looked around, sizing up Divine Son Zhen Wei's subordinates. How is it? Are you afraid, kid? I have 2,000 martial God Realm experts and 200,000 martial Saint Realm experts here. When it came to the number of his subordinates, Divine Son Zhen Wei couldn't help but feel proud. After all, he was defeated by Yi Hao before. Now that he finally seized the opportunity, he naturally wanted to vent his anger in front of Yi Hao. And the more defeated he was, the more he wanted to avenge his humiliation. And defeating Yi Hao was something he wanted to do even in his dreams. So when he saw his subordinates appear, he became even more high-spirited. He wanted to see a trace of fear and panic on Yi Hao's face, but he was destined to be disappointed. Looking at the calm Yi Hao, Junwei was also puzzled. He wondered if Yi Hao was scared silly. Otherwise, why didn't he react at all? Aren't you afraid? Divine Sun Junwei looked at Yi Hao and asked. He hoped so much that he could hear Yi Hao begging for mercy. Are you retarded? Or were you beaten silly last time? Can't you tell whether I'm afraid or not? Yi Hao looked at Junwei as if he was an idiot. He was curious. Junwei was a divine son after all. How did such an idiotic question come out his mouth? Little bastard, who are you calling retarded? Hearing Yi Hao's words and Yi Hao's gaze, Junwei was annoyed. And Yi Hao could have mentioned anything, but he just had to mention the last time. He would never forget the loss he suffered in the secret realm last time. And at this moment, he finally couldn't tolerate the anger in his heart. Little bastard, you forced me to do this. I want your fire dragon empire to be destroyed. Junwei glared at Yi Hao and roared angrily. He originally wanted to suppress Yi Hao and let Yi Hao die in humiliation. But he didn't want to wait. He just wanted to kill Yi Hao. All of you listen to my order. Destroy the Divine Sun's empire. Junwei roared loudly, and the experts behind Junwei began to attack when they heard Junwei's words. Wait a minute, Yi Hao shouted when he saw that the people from Junwei were about to attack. Everyone instantly stopped what they were doing and looked at Yi Hao curiously. At this moment, Junwei looked at Yi Hao mockingly. Why are you afraid now? If you are, you still have a chance. Kneel down before me first. Junwei thought that Yi Hao was going to beg for mercy, so he didn't hide the ridicule on his face. I want to know if you have any last words. Aye, Junwei. When the time comes, I'll attack Jintian Divine Nation and tell Jintian Divine Emperor. Yi Hao said with a smile. Shameless boasting. You actually dare to play with us? Hearing Yi Hao's words, Junwei thought that he had been played again. He immediately shouted, Kill them! Kill! Leave this idiot behind! Just as Junwei's voice fell, Yi Hao also spoke at the same time. Yi Hao stood with his hands behind his back, his tone full of confidence. Junwei was puzzled. He didn't understand where Yi Hao got his confidence from. Death is near. Let's see how long you can pretend. Junwei thought to himself when he saw Yi Hao's expression. He didn't believe that Yi Hao wouldn't be afraid at all with so many experts around. Even if he wasn't afraid, wasn't he afraid of being destroyed? Haha, Your Highness Divine Sun, just watch. A small country dares to go against Your Highness Divine Sun. Watch how I deal with them. Why should Your Highness Divine Sun be angry with such a broken country? Brothers, destroy this little bastard's country and vent your anger for Your Highness Divine Sun. Brothers, there's not enough time, so I didn't finish it. Now I'll make up for it. If you see it repeated, remove the bookshelf and reload it. Divine Sun Junwei bellowed. He wanted to put Yi Hao in his place. With Junwei's shout, countless experts immediately flew out from all directions and surrounded Yi Hao in the middle. Yi Hao looked around and sized up Junwei Divine Sun subordinates. How is it? Are you afraid? I have 2,000 Martial God Realm experts and 200,000 Martial Saint Realm experts here. When it came to the number of his subordinates, Junwei Divine Sun couldn't help but feel proud. After all, he used to be defeated by Yi Hao. Now that he finally seized the opportunity, he naturally wanted to vent his anger in front of Yi Hao. Moreover, the more defeated he was, the more he wanted to avenge his humiliation. And defeating Yi Hao was something he wanted to do even in his dreams. So when he saw his subordinates appear, he became even more high-spirited. He wanted to see a trace of fear and panic on Yi Hao's face, but he was destined to be disappointed. Looking at the calm Yi Hao, Junwei was also puzzled. He wondered if Yi Hao was scared silly. Otherwise, why didn't he have any reaction at all? Aren't you afraid? Junwei Divine Sun looked at Yi Hao and asked. He hoped so much that he could hear Yi Hao begging for mercy. Are you retarded? Or were you beaten silly last time? Can't you tell whether I'm afraid or not? Yi Hao looked at Junwei as if he was looking at an idiot. He was curious. Jinwei was a divine son, after all. How did such an idiotic question come out of his mouth? Little bastard, who are you calling retarded? Hearing Yihao's words and the look in Yihao's eyes, Jinwei was annoyed. Moreover, of all things, Yihao had to bring up the last time. He would never forget the loss he suffered in the mystic realm last time. At this moment, he finally couldn't tolerate the anger in his heart. Little bastard, you forced me to do this. I want your fire dragon empire to be destroyed. Jinwei glared at Yihao and roared angrily. He originally wanted to suppress Yihao and let Yihao die in humiliation. But he didn't want to wait. He just wanted to kill Yihao. All of you listen up. Destroy the divine son's empire. Jinwei roared loudly. The experts behind Jinwei Divine Son were about to attack when they heard Jinwei's words. Wait a minute, Yihao shouted when he saw Jinwei's people about to attack. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Yihao curiously. Jinwei looked at Yihao sarcastically. Why are you afraid now? If you are, you still have a chance. Kneel down before me first. Jinwei thought Yihao was going to beg for mercy, so he didn't hide the sarcasm on his face. I think you're mistaken. I want to know if you have any last words. When the time comes, I will attack Jintian Divine Nation and tell Jintian Divine Emperor, Yihao said with a smile. Shameless boasting. How dare you play with us? Hearing Yihao's words, Jinwei thought he had been played again and immediately shouted, Kill him! Kill! Leave this idiot here for me. As soon as Jinwei finished speaking, Yihao also spoke at the same time. Chapter 602. Don't. Please don't. Jinwei panicked when he saw that Yihao was about to attack. He didn't know what to do. Furthermore, he discovered that Yihao's strength was actually even more formidable than before. Hence, he couldn't resist Yihao's attack at all. Hurry up and save the Divine Son, the Jinwei Divine Nation's guards shouted in panic. However, no matter how the Jinwei Divine Nation's guards rushed over, they couldn't advance. All of them were killed immediately. No! Jinwei screamed unwillingly as he watched Yihao's blade slash across his neck. Jinwei watched as Yihao's blade slashed across his neck. Then, his body went limp and he fell to the ground. Ding dong! Congratulations to the host for killing the Divine Nation's Divine Son. You have received a Divine Level Dual Cultivation Technique. Dual Cultivation Technique? Yihao felt relieved when he saw his subordinates slay the Jinwei Divine Nation's powerhouses. He immediately took out the Divine Level Dual Cultivation Technique. Divine Level Dual Cultivation Technique allows the host to dual cultivate with a female to gain a large amount of experience. The higher the level of the other party, the more experience the host will gain. At the same time, the host will be able to raise the cultivation of the other party. Yihao was excited when he saw the introduction of the technique. This was simply a man's benefit. The system wanted him to start a harem. After looking at the technique, Yihao glanced at the battle that was coming to an end and turned around to leave. However, the moment he turned around, Yihao's heart skipped a beat. A sense of danger welled up in his heart. Oh no! Yihao sensed danger and immediately tried to escape to the side. Die, you little bastard! At this moment, a cold voice rang in Yihao's ears. SSS. Yihao felt a pain in his chest when he heard this voice. It was so painful that he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Die. Although Yihao was being attacked, he still managed to free up his hands and attack the person who had come. However, Yihao couldn't see the person clearly. His attack on the person's chest missed. Yihao knew that this person's cultivation was definitely above his own. Gui Yifan and Guan Yu immediately realized that Yihao was in danger and rushed toward Yihao. Hurry up and save the Lord. There are two experts at the peak of the martial god realm. Sensing the cultivation levels of Gui Yifan and Guan Yu, Purple Heaven Supreme God was secretly surprised. Where did this little bastard find such an expert? The Purple Heaven Supreme God was extremely puzzled. After all, he was well aware of the Yi Baishan's background. He was just a prince of a duchy. And yet, this prince of a duchy, whom he viewed as a vile spawn, had shocked him time and time again. First, it was the matter of the myriad country ranking. Now, it was the matter of the four evil spirits. In fact, Zhenwei had already arrived when she had just arrived at the Fire Dragon Empire. The reason why she hadn't made a move was that she wanted to see the background of Yi Hao's Fire Dragon Empire. At the same time, she was extremely curious as to why Zhentian Divine Kingdom had sent so many experts, including God Zhenwei himself. If the Fire Dragon Empire didn't have anything that Zhentian Divine Kingdom needed, Zhentian Divine Kingdom wouldn't have sent so many people. However, what shocked her was that the Fire Dragon Empire had more experts than Zhenwei had brought. Moreover, Yi Hao wasn't afraid at all and had killed Zhenwei. She couldn't help but wonder how many trump cards Yi Hao had. How dare he kill the Divine Kingdom's godson? Wasn't he afraid of Zhentian Divine Kingdom's revenge? After seeing Yi Hao kill Zhenwei, she couldn't hold back anymore. She didn't want to miss this opportunity. After all, there was no one around Yi Hao. In her opinion, it would be easy for her to kill Yi Hao with her cultivation level. However, she hadn't expected that the Fire Dragon Empire would have a peak martial god realm expert. She couldn't help but feel anxious. Dying. The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's attack landed on Yi Hao. When he saw Yi Hao's body turn into nothingness, he heaved a sigh of relief. Little B****, you're finally dead. Let's see how your mother will go against me. The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor sneered when he saw Yi Hao die. The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was in a good mood. After all, getting rid of Yi Hao was like getting rid of a knot in his heart that had been bothering him for so many years. Furthermore, he had always regarded Yi Hao as the shame of Zhentian Divine Kingdom. Now that he had personally washed away the shame, how could he not be in a good mood? When he thought about how his imperial aunt had always been against him, he became even more upset and angry. However, now that he had killed Yi Hao, he could imagine his imperial aunt's grief and indignation. As long as his imperial aunt knew about Yi Hao's death, her actions would definitely be extreme. When the time came, all he had to do was manipulate her a little, and the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor would belong to him. Just as the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was feeling smug, she suddenly felt a heavy blow on her back. The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor suddenly felt that he was losing consciousness. He wanted to force himself to regain consciousness, but he couldn't do it. Where am I? The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor opened his eyes in confusion. Then, his heart tightened as he recalled what had happened before he fainted. He knew clearly that he had been attacked. You're awake. Just as the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was still confused, she heard Yi Hao's voice. Hearing the man's voice, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was enraged and wanted to attack Yi Hao. This was because she hated men the most. Furthermore, a man who appeared in this situation could only be an enemy, not a friend. Therefore, she wasn't going to be polite. Where's my cultivation? However, when the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor attacked, she realized that her fist was weak and powerless. There was no martial power at all. Yi Hao sneered at the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor. Stop struggling. Your martial power has been sealed. It's you? Little bastard, you're not dead? Hearing Yi Hao's words, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor finally saw Yi Hao's face clearly. When she saw Yi Hao, her expression changed drastically. Impossible. You must be dead. Are you a human or a ghost? The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor asked. This was because she had killed Yi Hao with her own hands. There was no mistake. You'll know if I'm a human or a ghost after you try. Yi Hao teased as he stretched out 2 fingers and pinched the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's face. The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's voice was neither male nor female. Moreover, she was wearing a mysterious veil. However, when the veil was removed, Yi Hao was shocked. The Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was simply too beautiful. Although her face was cold, it gave Yi Hao the desire to conquer her. Chapter 603. It would have been better if the Purple Sky God Emperor had not said this. Yi Hao was instantly enraged. After all, he had lost a clone for nothing because of the Purple Sky God Emperor. Although it was not his real body, it was still a clone that he had painstakingly cultivated. If it had not been for his clone, he would have been dead by now. How could his murderer have not said anything? How could he have dared to scold him? As the saying went, this was intolerable. Yi Hao had been suppressing the anger in his heart so that he could investigate the purple sky god emperor's identity. Why would he want to kill him? According to his analysis, the purple sky god emperor was definitely not from the sky-shaking divine nation. If Yi Hao was really from the sky-shaking divine nation, the purple sky god emperor would have helped Jinwei when he was dying. Why would he wait until Jinwei was dead? It would have been better if the purple sky god emperor had not said this. Yi Hao was instantly enraged. After all, he had lost a clone for nothing because of the purple sky god emperor. Although it was not his real body, it was still a clone that he had painstakingly cultivated. If it had not been for his clone, he would have been dead by now. How could his murderer have not said anything? How could he have dared to scold him? As the saying went, this was intolerable. Yi Hao had been suppressing the anger in his heart so that he could investigate the purple sky god emperor's identity. Why would he want to kill him? After all, according to his analysis, the purple sky god emperor was definitely not from the sky-shaking divine nation. If Yi Hao was really from the sky-shaking divine nation, the purple sky god emperor would have helped Jinwei when he was dying. Why would he wait until Jinwei was dead? Yi Hao was instantly enraged by the purple sky god emperor's words. After all, he had lost a clone for nothing because of the purple sky god emperor. Although it was not his real body, it was still a clone that he had painstakingly cultivated. If it had not been for his clone, he would have been dead by now. How could his murderer have not said anything? How could he have dared to scold him? As the saying goes, if this can be tolerated, what else can be tolerated? Yi Hao had been forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart in order to investigate the identity of Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor. Why did he want to kill him? According to his analysis, the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was definitely not from the heaven-shaking divine nation. If Yi Hao was really from the Jintian God nation, then when Zhun Wei died, the Purple Heaven God Emperor should have helped. Instead, he waited for Zhun Wei to die. It would have been better if the Purple Heaven God Emperor didn't say that. Now that he said that, Yi Hao was furious. After all, he had lost an avatar for nothing because of the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor. Although that was not his actual body, it was still something that he had painstakingly cultivated. Furthermore, if he didn't have a clone, he would be dead by now. Why didn't the murderer who killed him say anything? Instead, he dared to scold him. As the saying goes, if this can be tolerated, what else can be tolerated? Yi Hao had been forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart in order to investigate the identity of Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor. Why did he want to kill him? According to his analysis, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was definitely not from the heaven-shaking divine nation. If Yi Hao was really from the heaven-shaking divine nation, then when Zhun Wei died, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor should have helped. Instead, he waited for Zhun Wei to die. It would have been better if the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor hadn't said that. Yi Hao was instantly enraged. After all, he had lost an avatar for nothing because of the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor. Although that wasn't his actual body, it was still something that he had painstakingly cultivated. Furthermore, if he hadn't had a clone, he would have been dead by now. How could his murderer have not said anything? How could he have dared to scold him? As the saying went, if one could tolerate it, what could one do? Yi Hao had been forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart in order to investigate the identity of Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor. Why do you want to kill him? According to his analysis, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was definitely not from the heaven-shaking divine nation. If Yi Hao was really from the heaven-shaking divine nation, then when Zhun Wei died, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor should have helped him. Instead, he waited for Zhun Wei to die. It would have been better if the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor hadn't said that. Yi Hao was instantly enraged. After all, he had lost an avatar for nothing because of the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor. Although that wasn't his actual body, it was still something that he had painstakingly cultivated. Furthermore, if he hadn't had a clone, he would have been dead by now. Why didn't the murderer who killed him say anything? Instead, he actually dared to scold him. As the saying went, if one could tolerate it, what could one do? Yi Hao had been forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart in order to investigate the identity of Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor. Why did he want to kill him? According to his analysis, the Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor was definitely not from the heaven-shaking divine nation. If Yi Hao was really from the heaven-shaking divine nation, then when Zheng Wei died, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor should have helped him. Instead, he waited for Zheng Wei to die. It would have been better if the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor hadn't said that. Yi Hao was instantly enraged. After all, he had lost an avatar for nothing because of the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor. Although that wasn't his actual body, it was still something that he had painstakingly cultivated. Furthermore, if he hadn't had a clone, he would have been dead by now. Why didn't the murderer who killed him say anything? Instead, he actually dared to scold him. As the saying went, if one could tolerate it, what could one do? Yi Hao had been forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart in order to investigate the identity of Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor. Why did he want to kill him? According to his analysis, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was definitely not from the heaven-shaking divine nation. If Yi Hao was really from the heaven-shaking divine nation, then when Zheng Wei died, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor should have helped him. Instead, he waited for Zheng Wei to die. It would have been better if the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor hadn't said that. Yi Hao was instantly enraged. After all, he had lost an avatar for nothing because of the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor. Although that wasn't his actual body, it was still something that he had painstakingly cultivated. Furthermore, if he hadn't had a clone, he would have been dead by now. Why didn't the murderer who killed him say anything? Instead, he actually dared to scold him. As the saying went, if one could tolerate it, what could one do? Yi Hao had been forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart in order to investigate the identity of Purple Sky, Supreme God Emperor. Why did he want to kill him? According to his analysis, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor was definitely not from the heaven-shaking divine nation. Chapter 604. I knew that you men are no good. The Purple Sky Divine Emperor had been waiting for Yi Hao's reply for a long time, so he couldn't help but say angrily, "Little guy, how dare you say that I'm no good?" Yi Hao was amused by the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's adorable look. "Then tell me, will you marry me?" The Purple Sky Divine Emperor raised his head arrogantly. As he spoke, his hand had already reached for Yi Hao's waist. Feeling that the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's jade-like fingers were about to pinch the soft flesh on his waist, Yi Hao immediately surrendered. Moreover, after fighting for 3 days and 3 nights, he didn't have much hatred for the Purple Sky Divine Emperor. In fact, he had a good impression of him. This kind of favorable impression came from the subconscious. Yi Hao guessed that this was very likely related to the divine-level dual cultivation technique. Moreover, looking at the Purple Sky Divine Emperor, he definitely wasn't a perverted person. Yi Hao didn't believe that he could change a person's mind just by doing that kind of thing. Therefore, this further proved that the divine-level dual cultivation technique could improve the relationship between 2 people and strengthen the relationship between 2 people subconsciously. "Yes, I'll definitely marry you," Yi Hao immediately said with a sincere face. Hearing this, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor immediately revealed a satisfied look. His jade-like hand moved from his waist to another position and grabbed something. Feeling the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's hand move, Yi Hao's body couldn't help but tremble. Immediately, he felt the infernal flame in his body ignite instantly. What a seductive demon! Seeing the Purple Sky Divine Emperor looking at him with a charming smile, Yi Hao immediately mounted his horse and taught the Purple Sky Divine Emperor a lesson. "You're the Purple Sky Divine Emperor? The Divine Emperor of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom?" After hearing the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's identity, Yi Hao was completely shocked. He had thought that the Purple Sky Divine Emperor was just an expert. He hadn't expected that the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's identity would be so terrifying. The Purple Sky Divine Emperor was the ruler of one of the 4 divine kingdoms in the Myriad Kingdom continent. He was definitely someone who had the right to speak in the myriad kingdom continent. A person of this level could definitely be ranked in the top 10. He was an existence that could destroy any country below the sacred dynasty with just a word. That was definitely an existence that no one in the myriad kingdom continent dared to provoke. Yet, it was such a powerful existence that he had forcefully slept with. Suddenly, Yihao sat up with a panicked look on his face. Logically speaking, the purple heaven supreme god emperor and the imperial ant were sisters. His mother was the imperial ant of the purple sky divine kingdom. Wouldn't that make her sisters with the purple sky divine emperor? And if he slept with his mother's sister, wouldn't that mean that he was in a mess? Yihao would never accept such a thing. What's wrong with you? Purple Sky Supreme God noticed Yihao's strange behavior and immediately asked. Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor laughed when he heard Yihao's thoughts. What are you laughing at? Yihao looked at the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor awkwardly, not knowing what to do. Seeing Yihao's awkward look, the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor immediately explained with a smile. Although your mother and I are sisters in name, we are not related by blood. What? Hearing the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's words, Yihao immediately heaved a sigh of relief. However, he still asked worriedly, Are you sure you're not lying to me? Why would I lie to you? The Purple Sky Divine Kingdom. After listening to the Purple Sky Supreme God Emperor's explanation, Yihao immediately understood. It turned out that the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom needed an Emperor God and an Imperial Ant for every generation. Logically speaking, only one Emperor God was needed. The Imperial Ant's role was to serve as a backup or a supervisor. If the current Emperor God made a mistake, the Imperial Ant had the right to unite many ministers and elders to impeach the current Emperor God. The Purple Sky Divine Kingdom had a rule that the Emperor God and the Imperial Ant could get married. This was because the successor of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom had to be found in the Myriad Kingdom continent. Every Emperor God and Imperial Ant of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom was definitely a girl with exceptional talent in the Myriad Kingdom continent. Then, they would be taken to the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom and trained to be the next Emperor God. The purpose of this was to ensure that the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom would not fall for a long time. The leader would always be a genius, not a mediocre person. Therefore, this was the purpose of not allowing marriage. It was because they were afraid that the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom would completely become a possession in the pocket of one person. After all, if someone got married and had a child, they might not be able to selflessly pass the throne of the Emperor God to an outsider. However, if there were no children, it would be different. Therefore, the rule of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom was that the Emperor God and the Imperial Ant had to find an orphan in the Myriad Kingdom continent. Moreover, the orphan had to be a genius without parents. If the Imperial Ant and the Emperor God had a man, they would basically kill that man. And if they had a child, the child's fate would still be incomparably tragic. As for the Imperial Ant and the Emperor God themselves, it was very likely that they would lose their positions or even be executed. Hearing the Purple Sky Divine Emperor's words, Yihao did not know whether to feel happy or sad for the person who had become the Emperor God and the Imperial Ant. After all, to be able to become the Emperor God and the Imperial Ant, it must be a 1 in a billion existence. It also required great luck and great opportunities to be able to do so. However, it was also sad that they were destined to not experience love, to not be able to find someone who truly loved them, and to not be able to have children of their own. But then Yihao had his own doubts. Logically speaking, his mother had violated the great taboo of the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom by giving birth to him. However, why was it that nothing had happened to her at all? Why was she still sitting on the throne of the Imperial Ant, contending with the Purple Sky Divine Kingdom? Hearing Yihao's doubts, the Purple Sky Divine Emperor immediately explained. It turned out that because the Imperial Ant had hidden too well, she had not been discovered at that time. And originally, the current Emperor God should have been Yihao's mother. Because Yihao's mother was extremely talented, she was deeply doted on by the previous Imperial Ant and the Emperor God. But later, when a matter was exposed, Yi Hao's mother should have been executed. However, with the previous imperial aunt and the emperor god's protection, her life was naturally guaranteed. Moreover, Yi Hao's mother had previously recruited a large number of loyal subordinates, as well as a large number of civil and military officials, as well as many elders. Therefore, even though Yi Hao's mother had missed the opportunity to become the emperor god, she had still obtained the position of imperial aunt. At that time, the purple sky divine emperor had not been able to contend with Yi Hao's mother because Yi Hao's mother was simply too powerful. If she had not made a mistake, then the position of emperor god would definitely have belonged to Yi Hao's mother. It would have had nothing to do with her at all. Therefore, she had wanted to kill Yi Hao, but she had not been able to do so. It was not until she had ascended to the position of emperor god and developed for a few years that she had a certain amount of power in her hands that she had made a move on Yi Hao. Chapter 605. However, when the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor failed to capture Yi Hao, she did not put Yi Hao in her eyes. After all, no matter how capable a prince of a duchy was, without good cultivation resources and cultivation techniques, what could he achieve? Even protecting himself might be a problem, let alone being a threat to her. Therefore, at that time, Yi Hao was not even an ant in the eyes of the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor. Later on, there was news that Yi Hao was killed by a mysterious young emperor, which made the Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor believe it. However, how could she have known that it was just a smokescreen by Yi Hao? In the next few years, Yi Hao grew at an unimaginable speed. Even if she sent the golden armored warriors, they could not do anything. Yi Hao had even made some heaven-defying achievements. He had actually destroyed the Four Fiends' divine union. This forced her to take action personally. Who would have thought that not only would she fail to kill Yi Hao, but she would also become Yi Hao's woman? The Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor sighed. The world was unpredictable. Even if she was one of the rulers of the Myriad Kingdom continent, there were still many things that she could not control. For example, the man beside her. By the way, since you killed the prince of Jintian Divine Nation, they will not let you off easily. The Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor said while lying in Yi Hao's arms. Yes. How strong is Jintian Divine Nation? Yi Hao nodded and asked. Yi Hao was already mentally prepared that Jintian Divine Nation would not let him off easily. Yi Hao would not hesitate to kill Zhen Wei if they did not let him off. The reason why he killed Zhen Wei meant that he was prepared to bear the wrath of Jintian Divine Nation. There are a total of 4 divine nations in the Myriad Kingdom continent. They are Wu Ming Divine Nation, Jintian Divine Nation, Imo Shen Nation, and Purple Heaven Supreme God Nation. The strength of Jintian Divine Nation is estimated to be around 10,000 martial gods and 1,000,000 martial sages. This is their strength on the surface. There should not be much hidden strength. Even though Yi Hao was prepared for this, he was still shocked when he heard this number. A hint of worry appeared on Yi Hao's face. He had thought that he would be able to fight against any divine dynasty. But now, it seemed that he was still too arrogant. His current strength was nearly 4 times weaker than heaven-shaking divine nations. Seeing the worry in Yi Hao's eyes, Purple Heaven Divine Emperor immediately smiled and said, "Don't worry, my husband. Don't forget, you still have me." Hearing this, Yi Hao was overjoyed. Indeed, the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom was behind the Purple Heaven Divine Emperor. The Violet Sky Divine Kingdom's Divine Emperor was his woman, and the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom's Imperial Aunt was his mother. Therefore, the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom was his. However, the only thing that worried Yi Hao was the remaining 2 kingdoms of God. He couldn't rely on the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom to fight against 3 other divine kingdoms. Rumble. While Yi Hao was still pondering, there was a sudden thunderous rumble above the main hall. Hearing the thunder, the Violet Sky Divine Kingdom's Divine Emperor's expression changed. He immediately looked at Yi Hao worriedly. Yi Hao's expression also changed. "My husband, is this your lightning tribulation? Have you broken through to the martial god realm?" Purple Heaven asked. Yi Hao nodded. He had actually forgotten about this. In a myriad kingdom continent, when a martial sage broke through to the martial god realm, he would have to undergo a lightning tribulation. Yihao had broken through to the ninth order martial god realm through the dual cultivation technique, so he had forgotten about the lightning tribulation. Who would have thought that the lightning tribulation would come at this time? My husband, get up quickly. I will protect you. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor knew that this was no small matter. If he wasn't careful, he could kill Yihao. In the natural world, the hardest thing to control was the lightning tribulation. The lightning tribulation was violent and full of destructive power. As a peak martial god, Purple Heaven Divine Emperor was not afraid of a small lightning tribulation. However, the powerful force of the tribulation was able to shatter a peak martial god realm expert into pieces within an instant. When Purple Heaven Divine Emperor sensed the lightning tribulation in the sky, she knew that the lightning tribulation was extremely powerful. She only sensed it slightly, and she felt that it was breathtaking. Yihao and Purple Heaven Divine Emperor immediately put on their clothes and flew out of the main hall. When they came out of the main hall and saw the lightning tribulation in the sky, Purple Heaven Divine Emperor and Yihao were completely stunned. How could it be like this? Purple Heaven Divine Emperor didn't realize that her voice was trembling when she saw the lightning tribulation in the sky. As far as the eye could see, the area within 100 miles was completely engulfed in lightning. Purple lightning was everywhere. The area within 100 miles had turned into a sea of lightning. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor couldn't understand why the lightning tribulation was so fierce when it was just across God realm. When she had gone through the lightning tribulation, it was already very powerful, and she had almost lost her life. Later on, she had relied on some secret treasures from the Purple Heaven Divine Kingdom to go through the divine tribulation. However, his divine tribulation only covered a radius of 15 kilometers. But Yihao's lightning tribulation was 100 miles wide. Your Majesty, what is going on? His Majesty is going through the lightning tribulation. Hurry up and help him. Hurry up and protect His Majesty. Looking at the power of the lightning tribulation, the faces of Guan Yu and the others changed drastically. They hurriedly went to protect Yihao. Hurry up and get out of the lightning tribulation. Otherwise, you will only make the lightning tribulation more powerful. Purple Heaven Divine Emperor said anxiously when she saw Guan Yu and the others. This was because the lightning tribulation was only for one person. If someone helped, the lightning tribulation would become more powerful. Unless there was a peak martial god realm expert helping, even a peak martial god realm expert would be more of a hindrance than help. Therefore, the lightning tribulation was only for one person. Even if others wanted to help, they couldn't. Therefore, the lightning tribulation was the cruelest. If one wasn't careful, he or she could die. However, an ordinary person's lightning tribulation was only a few miles wide. As long as one cultivated steadily and did his or her best, he or she would be able to go through the lightning tribulation successfully. There were very few lightning tribulations that were more than 10 miles wide. There were very few people like Purple Heaven Divine Emperor who had a lightning tribulation of 30 miles wide. The stronger the lightning tribulation was, the more talented and powerful one was. In the Myriad Kingdom continent, the strongest geniuses were Qian Huang and the Devouring Demon God. Their lightning tribulations were 79 miles and 81 miles respectively. So far, no one had been able to surpass them. However, Yihao's lightning tribulation was 100 miles wide. How could Purple Heaven Divine Emperor not be worried and shocked? Hearing Purple Heaven Divine Emperor's words, Guan Yu and the others looked at Purple Heaven Divine Emperor hesitantly, and then looked at Yihao with questioning eyes. Chapter 606. All of you back off. Yihao knew that the more people there were in the lightning calamity, the more dangerous it would be. Therefore, the lightning calamity was no joke. Yihao said solemnly. Upon hearing Yihao's order, everyone was worried, but they still obeyed and left the area of the lightning calamity. Husband, let me stay with you. Looking at the lightning calamity, she said, "The purple sky, supreme God estimated that Yi Hao's chances of surviving the lightning calamity were close to zero. However, he was unwilling to accept that Yi Hao had failed his tribulation and perished in the end. If this had happened in the past, she would have been overjoyed. However, Yi Hao was her man now. Life had always been so dramatic and unpredictable, making it impossible for people to understand. You back off too," Yi Hao said solemnly. "If I leave, you might die. If I stay, you might still have a chance," the purple sky supreme God said anxiously. In fact, she was not confident that she could survive the lightning calamity. But for the sake of Yi Hao, she was willing to take the risk and gamble. Looking at the purple sky supreme God's anxious expression, Yi Hao was touched. He pulled the purple sky supreme God into his arms and said softly, "Be good and listen to me. Leave quickly. I promise that I will survive the lightning calamity safely. You are not lying to me?" Hearing Yi Hao's confident words, the purple sky supreme God did not understand why Yi Hao was so confident. Rumble. The sea of purple lightning rolled in the sky and thunder boomed. It was so loud that everyone's eardrums were about to burst. The entire lightning field was pressing down. It looked like it was about to come crashing down. Outside the area of the lightning calamity, Guan Yu and the others felt that they could not breathe. Yi Hao and the purple sky supreme God stood under the lightning calamity. Their faces were illuminated by the sea of purple lightning. Their long hair fluttered in the absence of wind. They looked even more valiant. However, at this moment, everyone's hearts were incomparably nervous. They didn't dare to take another breath. Yi Hao looked at the lightning tribulation that was about to descend at any moment and said anxiously, "Hurry up, it's too late. Then you have to live." Purple Sky Supreme God didn't dare to force Yi Hao. He reluctantly left the area of the lightning trial. "My husband, you must survive the lightning tribulation." Purple Heaven Supreme God shouted when he saw Yi Hao standing proudly in the middle of the lightning tribulation. "Long live your majesty! Long live your majesty! Long live his majesty!" The people and soldiers who were watching immediately knelt on the ground under Guan Yu's lead. Although Lei Jie and the others couldn't help Yi Hao, they could only cheer for Yi Hao. In the face of this mighty thunder calamity, they were incomparably weak. Therefore, they were sweating profusely for Yi Hao. In their opinion, Yi Hao had just broken through to the martial god realm. How could he survive such a powerful lightning tribulation? They could only pray that Yi Hao could survive the lightning tribulation. Although the chances were slim, they were unwilling to let go of this glimmer of hope. Everyone looked nervously at Yi Hao, who was in the lightning territory. "Come on." Yi Hao looked at the lightning tribulation that was about to descend from the sky. His heart was boiling with excitement. In fact, he wasn't too afraid of the lightning tribulation. Instead, he was looking forward to it. He knew why the lightning tribulation was so powerful. After all, when others underwent the lightning tribulation, they would reach the first order martial god realm at the peak of the martial saint realm. However, his lightning tribulation started from the ninth order martial god realm. It would be strange if it wasn't powerful. However, if it was someone else who had just broken through to the martial god realm, they would have no chance of surviving such a powerful lightning tribulation, let alone surviving it. However, he was different. Although the lightning tribulation was powerful, he was a ninth order martial god realm. Moreover, his ninth order martial god realm was definitely not an ordinary ninth order martial god realm. He couldn't forget that he could fight people of a higher realm. Until now, he could fight people of a higher realm. Therefore, his current combat strength had completely surpassed the martial god realm. As for the cultivation realms below the martial god realm, Yi Hao wasn't too clear about them. However, there was no doubt that with his current strength, a peak martial god realm expert would be no match for him. In an instant, the lightning tribulation in the lightning territory fell. The first lightning tribulation was only as thick as a thumb. Although it was only as thick as a thumb, it was filled with destructive power. It could definitely destroy any cultivator below the peak of the martial saint realm. If a person didn't have a strong foundation and relied on ammunition to cultivate to the peak of the martial saint realm, they wouldn't be able to survive the first lightning tribulation. It's coming. Looking at the descending lightning tribulation, everyone's palms were sweating. They looked nervously at Yi Hao, not knowing if Yi Hao could survive it. Husband, you can definitely do it. The purple heaven supreme, God Emperor, clenched his fists, his heart, in his throat. Your Majesty is blessed. You will definitely survive the lightning tribulation and lead us to conquer the world. At this moment, all the ministers were thinking nervously. It could be said that at this moment, everyone in the Fire Dragon Empire froze. Without exception, everyone's gaze was fixed in Yi Hao's direction. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. I like to see how strong you are. Looking at the descending lightning tribulation, Yi Hao didn't dodge. Instead, he stood where he was and prepared to accept the lightning tribulation with his physical body. Although his cultivation had reached the 9th level martial god realm, his body was still weak. In terms of his physical body, it was still slightly weaker. This was something that every cultivator had. Therefore, going through the lightning tribulation was equivalent to rebuilding one's physical body and changing the quality of one's physical body. After a cultivator went through the lightning tribulation, the remaining power of the lightning tribulation would be returned to the cultivator and improve his physical body. Therefore, there was an unwritten rule that the more power of the lightning tribulation a cultivator endured, the greater the degree of change in his physical body and the greater the achievement he would achieve. Therefore, going through the lightning tribulation was definitely a matter of both danger and opportunity. Of course, if one wanted to obtain too much lightning tribulation to change his physical body, the prerequisite was that the person going through the lightning tribulation had to have a solid foundation. Otherwise, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to hold on until the end and would be killed by the lightning tribulation. Once one went through the lightning tribulation, there was no turning back. This was something that all the cultivators in the Myriad Kingdom continent knew. Because as long as one attracted the lightning tribulation, one would either succeed or face death. Soon, the thumb-sized lightning tribulation had already landed on Yi Hao's body. Suddenly, there was a crackling sound as the lightning tribulation surrounded Yi Hao's body. Everyone was stunned when they saw Yi Hao's actions. They didn't expect that Yi Hao would dare to use his physical body to resist the lightning tribulation. The Purple Heaven Supreme God Emperor was also shocked. She didn't expect Yi Hao to be so bold. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.